Oh, we live. I'm live now, right? We live. Heren, we live. Heren, come on, set with me. Come on, set, Missy, man, come on, set. Heren, come on the stage, man. Come on. Okay. Good evening, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, everybody. Today is another edition of the closing argument. Uh, Today is Wednesday, January 17th, so 18th, I think, 18th of January, and we are back on the closing argument. It's good to be back, and we look forward to having a very, very good show tonight. We have for the first few minutes, the first 30 minutes, we have the former fire chief from Minnesota. He will be appearing for the first 30 minutes, and then after that, at exactly 10 o'clock Liberian time and 5 o'clock USA time, we'll go straight to our guest for the day, Dr. Ibrahim Al-Bakri Nye. Dr. Ibrahim Al-Bakri Nye, a director and senior fellow from the Duke Institute for Economic and for Social and Economic Research. We're discussing about the tenure positions in Liberia. There have been several calls for revisit these tenure positions in Liberia. There are some positions, some positions that should not be tenured. There have been an argument about it, and so we'll be discussing it tonight with our guest, Dr. Ibrahim Al-Bakri Nye, and also about issue about good governance. But before we get to that, we welcome the former fire chief from Minnesota. He's here with our friend Wilfred Russell. So we get right into that segment, so we can get with the time. So we are ready. If your guests, you guys ready? Wilfred, welcome.
Yes, sir. Can you hear us?
Sorry, guys, I was on mute. How are you all doing? It sounds like a star-studded show today, with some pretty heavy guests talking some really important things that are trending in the country right now. So it's great to be here and nice seeing you all. So we are waiting for the former fire chief from the city of Brooklyn Park, who is now in Texas at Wichita Falls, Texas, Chief Ken Perlman, and Chief Butler. I think Chief Butler is from the East Coast, there, somewhere in the DMV. He's a Liberian immigrant, but Chief Perlman is not. He has been in the country before and has done some work there. Before we work very closely with him here in the Liberian community here in Minnesota, and especially when I was on the city council in Brooklyn Park. As I said earlier, he's our former fire chief. A very good guy, has done a lot for Liberia, and he's hoping to go back again to start work and doing another round of assessment as far as our fire response is concerned, and fire and emergency response is concerned. This is critically important, especially we've seen a lot of fires break out in the country. A number of ministries, I'm told, they've had fire happening there, whether it's arson or whether it was through electrical problem. We don't know. I don't know. But it'll be a good thing that we talk about it and talk about emergency response. And so this is one of the things that Chief Perlman and Chief Butler will be talking about, is the whole fire response. We saw the unfortunate incident in Torota that took place there, And so he will be talking to us about how we can, as a nation, prevent those kinds of those kinds of problems from happening. It was a complete major issue that saw the country in deep mourning because of all of the lives that were lost there. Back to you, Tomalin.
Okay. So while we're waiting, we just do some run round. Everybody, you have anything to say before we just get it going?
Well, we look forward to another great show today. We look forward to the fire chief. You said the chief had been to Liberia before and he did some work, right, Winford?
Yes, he did go to Liberia, and I know he will talk more about that. He did go to Liberia. I believe it was 2012. He donated some fire engine, some fire equipment. He did some assessment there, he and his team. And so he's pretty familiar with the country and the landscape, especially the political landscape of the country. He's pretty familiar with it.
And you say you guys, he's going to be going back to Liberia and trying to offer help to the new government, right?
Yes. So just going to share a little bit with you all about some of the work that he's going to be doing now. He's in touch with and has spoken directly with the president-elect, soon to be President Joseph Boakai. And so he was invited there for the inauguration. So he's going to be there for that. And so while he was there, he's going to do an assessment and work with the new government about fire response, fire prevention, and all of those things that come into the whole emergency response package. He's a decorated fire service person. He worked here in Minnesota, and he was here for a very long time before he went over to Texas, Wichita Falls, Texas, which is it's a medium-sized city. It's about 100,000 plus. So it's a fairly big city, and he's been running their fire operation there. The other person we will have with him, accompany him, is Chief John Butler. He's a Liberian immigrant. He's also a trained fire service, also a fire chief. I think he's in the DMV. So he will be accompanying Chief Perlman to Liberia for the inauguration and to do some basic assessment on the whole fire response and overall emergency response in the country.
Thank you. So we're looking forward to have him come on for the next few time we have and have a conversation with him about the fire situation of Liberia. But you've been working with the fire chief, and what are some areas that you think he's going to be helping Liberia to improve the fire situation?
I think just the whole emergency response piece. How soon we get there, and to save as many lives and properties as best as we can. I think he would speak about that. He would talk about that. He may touch on some of the recommendations that he made the last time when he was in Liberia, and they did he did an assessment. I think he took a team of about 9 or 10 people in Liberia back in 2012, I believe, and they did an assessment. And out of that assessment that was done, the whole fire response assessment, I mean, he made a lot of recommendation to the former government, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, that the president-elect was a part of. So he's going to touch on that, and he's going to touch on new services, a new approach to fire response and emergency response in the country, and recommendations to the new government, some things that need to be done to strengthen fire response and to reduce the occurrence of fire in the country. We don't seem to have a lot of problems in Liberia with bushfire, but we have a lot of problem with residential fire. So the man himself is here. Gentlemen, please welcome and meet Chief Ken Perlman, former fire chief of Brooklyn Park and former fire chief of Wichita Falls.
Chief Perlman, welcome, sir. Welcome to the
Thank you very much. It's good to be on your show. Thank you.
Welcome, Chief Perlman. Thanks for coming, and it's a pleasure to have you on the closing argument.
Yes, sir.
So, because we're just going for time, we'll just go straight into our program for today. We had enough time for today, but we'll just go into it right away. Yes, just tell a little bit about yourself, and then we can just go right away and how you got connected to Liberia and everything, and your trip to Liberia.
Well, as you may or may not know, this is not my first trip to Liberia. Back under the leadership of President Johnson, I led a team starting in 2010, and over an 8-year period, we deployed 5 or 6 times to the Republic and brought with us teams of fire and emergency medical executives that invested in training, infrastructure, equipment, and at the end of her tenure, there had not been, at least until the recent election, there had not been an invitation for us to come back. So we're very excited to be back on Liberian soil. I've always said I've always been able to see Liberia for what it can be. And while accepting the fact that there's some challenges that lie ahead of us. A local Liberian friend, Samuka Kiazolu, was very instrumental at getting me engaged originally. And he will continue to be involved with us as we kind of re-engage the team. And my trip to Liberia this coming week will include updating a complete assessment report. Back in 2012, we wrote about an 80-page assessment report of the current condition, and we use that as a roadmap to begin the process of rebuilding the infrastructure in Liberia. That report needs to be updated. So while I'm there to pay honor to His Excellency Joseph Boakai and to signal our support, I intend to work a bit and try to get that report updated while in country.
Great. Also, so you already have a plan. You're going to you're taking Liberia to assist the incoming government with our fire challenges, or just so just basically mainly besides the invitation go for the inauguration, you also be doing an assessment, I heard.
Yeah, that's correct. So I'm a strong believer that, the first step towards real progress is beginning with the truth. And the idea behind the assessment is to let's document the truth, even though the truth is not something that we're probably very proud of. But what condition are the stations in, the equipment, what's been going on with the training division, where during those years of 2012 to 2018, we brought 500 sets of complete firefighting gear. What happened to it? Where are they? Are any of them existing? So the assessment report is intended to give us that starting point and kind of be that very transparent and complete picture of where we're starting from. And then what my team is prepared to do is to take those findings and then working with the president, the vice president, the speaker of the House, other members of Congress, develop a plan that both moves the National Fire Service forward, as well as recognizing that there's a lot of competing interests for investment purposes. And so trying to maintain that balance while improving things We'll help guide that. We'll provide some counsel, give the president some options to consider.
Okay, before I bring my colleague in, let me ask the last question. You said you guys took some fire equipment and stuff like before, but who do you guys give it to?
You may remember from other news coverage, there was an organization. We started an organization that was called Fire Rescue Alliance. That organization still exists today. And over that 6-year period, we shipped 4 or 5 fire engines, 2 ambulances, and 500 sets of gear. I personally turned those over to the National Fire Service in a ceremony.
I have pictures of those, by the way.
Yeah, in a ceremony with the president and the vice president. And my team was there as we brought those and opened the shipping container and turned those over to the National Fire Service.
Oh, okay. Well, so everybody coming for that contribution.
Chief Bellman, you said that you got an 80-page assessment that you've done on the fire service in Liberia. Let me ask you, what do you think is part of the problem? What do our fire service need? What we have been lacking when it comes to providing adequate service to Liberia in terms of the kind of response that Liberia would need?
Well, that's a complicated. It's a great question. The answer is probably more complicated than we have time for. And I see one of my colleagues from Virginia is also logged in. The fire chief from Fairfax County, Virginia, and the president of the International Association of Fire Chiefs is joining us. This is my great friend and Liberian brother, John Butler. So I'll welcome him, and then I'll take a shot at answering your question. But the reason I wanted to introduce him, because I'm sure he's got a response as well. I think that there's a few things that we have to recognize as we look at trying to bring significant improvement to the National Fire Service. Number one, the country is a very large place. And in order to provide adequate coverage, we use a phrase here in the United States that has to do with the speed and the weight of our response. So when a fire breaks out, what controls that fire ultimately is how quickly we get there and the amount of resources in equipment and firefighters that we can bring to the scene. Liberia is hampered by the fact that, with all due respect, we can't do either of those very well. We are neither quick because we don't have enough fire stations and equipment. And we just don't, because of that, we're not able to get enough firefighters to the scene. So one of the biggest issues is going to be the ultimate investment in that infrastructure. It is expensive to run a fire service and to run it in a way that significantly reduces the impact of fire. The second thing that I'll share with you that I think is critically important to us is that we've got to have leadership in place in the National Fire Service that have appropriate amount of training across all of the various disciplines that it takes to run a fire service, who can sustain it after we leave. Because if our team arrives and if we spent a year there and had no one that effectively we could turn it over to and them to keep up with it, then most of the effort, if not all of it, would be for nothing. Chief Butler, you have something to add to that?
Sure. Yes. First and foremost, hello to everyone. It's great to see you all. It's great to be here.
Welcome, Chief Butler.
Thank you. Thank you. As Chief Perlman said, and we know, my name is John Butler, and I'm a fire chief in Virginia. And like Chief Perlman said, the president of the International Association of Fire Chiefs. As important, if not even more important, born and raised in Liberia and then leaving when I was 13 years old, and have been back a number of times in the last 12 years. I've spent quite a few days and nights and weeks with the Liberian National Fire Service. I want to start with the question that was asked just now about what is it going to take. First and foremost, the Liberian National Fire Service should be at the table when we have that conversation. I want to be careful not that we come, swashbuckling from the United States to solve their problems and their issues, and I want to make sure that they also have input on what has worked and what isn't working. Everything Chief Perlman said is correct. Same issues in Liberia, it's the same issues in America. When people and equipment, and how do you get there? How fast you get there safely? Liberia's got so many layers to the onion, like Chief Perlman was saying. You have a pedestrian community. You have a lot of density in the city. People don't get out of your way to move fast. There's not very strong regulations in buildings and all. There's so much opportunity here to get it right, the fire service. But it has to involve and include the fire service in Liberia and the community. Community risk reduction has to include the community. I could come with all the ideas, all the money, all the trucks and everything else. And it's somewhat, and I'm saying the same thing that Chief Perlman said, but a different way, that, equipment don't matter by itself. The training of the fire service, training of the community, all those things will have to come together. So I'll stop there, just kind of jumping on that last question that was asked. This is a Liberian issue, and we're happy to help. I can't not help. I'm a Liberian. I cannot help. I can't not help. Many of the trips I would come and help the fire service was with me in a backpack and some snack bars. For years, that's what I would do, and so intent is everything. So I'll stop there.
Let's welcome Pastor Alexander Collins, the chairman of the board of the Liberian Ministers Association in Minnesota. Yeah, and he is the one who's organizing this trip and bringing all of these folks together. And he did that too in 2012. He was one of those who have been a part of this and working with the fire service in Kakata and in Monrovia and all over Liberia. So, Pastor Collins, welcome to the closing argument.
Thank you. Good evening to each one of you. Dr. Peabody and Chairman Sanvee and Chief Tomalin George, Brother Julius, Chief Butler and Chief Philemon. What an honor to be with each one of you tonight. As Mr. Russell said, when we got invited to the inauguration, we said to ourselves, when I say we, the Liberian Ministers Association here, is a network of over 50 churches in the state and over 190 pastors. So when we got invited, we thought that we can't just go to the country just to attend inauguration and come back. So we reached out to our good friend, Chief Perlman and Chief John Butler, with whom we worked for several years. And I was on the board of Fire Rex Lion when we made a first trip, took some fire trucks. And so it has been a long partnership. And we think that at this point, that we can come together, we can help solve the problem. Every time I think about Liberia, the issue of fire is very nerve-wracking. It's obvious that we are very vulnerable to fire. And many individuals have lost their lives. If we just had a simple process in place, those would have been prevented. So we're just glad tonight that we are making this trip to Liberia with our good friends. We have 9 pastors that are going from Minnesota, and plus the 2 chiefs. We have a team of 11 going. And we are just grateful that we're going to be able to do some assessment while we are there. The group of pastors will be in Kakata. We're going to go to Kakata. We bought a library. We bought a land to build a library there. So we're going to also visit there. While we are in Liberia, just for the record, we intend to meet with the president, the vice president, the Senate Pro Tem, the Speaker of the House. We intend to meet with the Chief Justice, those we've laid out. And we want to do that with our partners so that the whole thing about fire services is not just an executive order, but it's also something that works throughout the government. So again, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you.
Ben, go ahead. You got any question for Chief
Well,
Perlman and also Mr. John Butler? We're very proud to have Mr. Butler, especially being a
Chief
Liberian.
Butler too as well. So Chief
Chief
President and
Butler,
Chief Butler.
Chief Butler, a Liberian and heading the head of the fire department of Fairfax County. What a big area in Virginia, and we're proud to have
and
you guys here.
well, it's good to see you guys, and thank you for everything that you're doing, and will be doing. Chief Butler, you say from Fairfax? Is that what you
Yes,
said?
yes,
Fairfax,
sir.
Virginia.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I used to live in Manassas, so
Oh,
that's
yes,
that's
yes,
why
that- down the
Fairfax,
street. Yeah.
Fairfax is not far from Manassas. But yeah, listen. Thank you guys. I mean, anything that is in the interest of our country is something that we welcome. Our thing is sustainability. For me, I think that's what we need to pay attention on. I don't think there's been a shortage of donation of fire trucks and fire equipments to Liberia. Is the question is why are we always accepting donations and we're not continuing and training our people? So I'm hoping maybe when you get there, when you speak to the president and to the vice president and to the relevant authority, it's something you should be able to push. I think you said that you have some Liberian in you're Liberian from what I think I heard, right? So it's
I
your
am.
country. It's your country too, you know. We have dual citizenship, so you're it's your country. Go in there, and I think for me that would be my only recommendation. I think you guys should go and try to talk to them and talk about the issue of sustainability because we can't continue on this this spree of every time people are going to visit our country we're asking for handouts and so I think I'm more interested now in what we can do to build a resilient and a sustainable fire force. That's what I'm more interested in because since JJ Roberts' time, we've been having donations of fire trucks and fire. I think we need to at some point to stop it. So that's my only comment. But I want to thank you for your service and for what you do, even in the United States. I want to thank you for your service. I think firefighting is probably one of the most noble professions that you can have out there. So I just want to say thank you, and we look forward to seeing you in Monrovia.
Thank you, and you make a good point. Since JJ Roberts and even before, for all our time as a country,
Existence, yeah.
There's been this notion that we seek and receive donations. Chief Prilliman and I spent some time in Liberia, and I'll tell you one thing: the downside of free isn't free. Sometimes free isn't free because there's a big concern with interoperability, interconnectivity. Those words, if I'm getting one truck from India and one truck from Czechoslovakia and another truck from the UK and one from the US, making those four things work and the hose threads, the couplings, and all. I mean, we said, Chief Prilliman and I said a few minutes ago, this onion, this topic has so many layers. We could be on this broadcast for 6 hours, easy. And it could be a semester class in college on the variables. But I don't want to spend too much time in the negative space with this. There's a lot of great opportunity here. I'm excited. I'm excited for the national leadership who supports the public safety in general. Partnerships and collaborations. That's another topic we can talk about with our regional partners on how strength is in numbers and force multiplier. We don't have to send people all the way to the U.S. to get training. There are ways we can do things on the ground in Liberia, in the region. There's so many opportunities to do things. It's exciting. I'm glad to see Chief Prilliman here on the call and go into the Republic of Liberia in the next few days, like I am and the rest of us. And we have a lot to catch up on, a lot to talk about with the Liberian National Fire Service leadership and the president-elect and his team. I look forward to that.
Let me ask you guys if you Lofa, just before you come in. Now, Chief Prilliman, when you went to Liberia and did that assessment a long time ago with Chief Butler too as well, in 2012, you came up with the 80-page report that Dr. Peabody referenced. You made some recommendations. Can you share with us some of the recommendations that were contained in that report, the both you and Chief Butler, and were those recommendations implemented? With some of those recommendations implemented? And then after that, the next question would be if the both of you saw the footage about the fire explosion, the truck explosion, fuel truck explosion in Total, and if you guys can speak to that too, because the whole piece about the intersection between public health, public safety, fire and fire response, medical response, have been attached to it. I know what we do here in Brooklyn Park, and when Chief Parliament was here, we have an emergency response team that is on all of our calls as well. So can you please share with us the recommendations that you made, and if those recommendations, if some of those recommendations were implemented?
So the report contained literally dozens of, as my brother points out, dozens of opportunity for investment and improvement. It was very forward-leaning document of not intended to be critical of where we were, but instead focused on what we could do. And not only did we make the recommendations, we began the process under President Johnson and Vice President Boakai of implementing those between donations that we raised at approximately 140,000 US that the Republic of Liberia made available to us. We purchased an engine, and we brought teams of professional trainers. We ran, I think our last deployment included, there were 2 groups of 15. One group was there for the first 2 weeks of November. The second group was there the last 2 weeks. John and I and one other were there for the whole month, overseeing the training. So our recommendations included better training, more fire engines. We made a number of recommendations with regard to emergency medicine out in the field, pre-hospital care. That resulted in 2 ambulances being shipped to the Republic. The firefighters had no protective gear, and we identified that as one of the biggest priorities. And we were successful at getting 500 complete sets of gear that we put in a container, shipped, received it, and distributed it to the firefighters. So there was a lot of work that got done. There is more work that could have been done. Again, I go back to what I said earlier, and that's this balancing between moving the organizations forward, the public safety organization forward, and the amount of resources that are available. And that includes both, our resources, which are not unlimited, our donations, which are not unlimited, as well as what the Republic might make available. And so I think we're going to find the same thing. We're going to find that, we need to replace apparatus. We need to replace stations. We probably need to replace a lot of that gear. I've heard that there's very little of it that's still in service today. Back then, the radio system was in terrible condition. We deployed a specialist who brought radios and antennas. It was my understanding that those were all implemented. But there'd be another area. I don't know if they work. One of the things that, if I get a child, I'd love to meet all of you face to face. I don't know if that's possible, but over the next several years, what you will learn about me is I will never say something that's ever intended to be disrespectful, but I tend to be direct to the point of making people uncomfortable. And so here's my first entree for this group is this. One of the cultural issues that impacts sustainability is the problem with all the donation is there's no skin in the game. Like there's no vested interest in the donations, and therefore maintenance is not a big priority. In the United States, when a firefighter gets a set of gear, he or she will move mountains to make sure that gear is always ready, always serviceable, and at the ready so that they can use it to fight fire. the fact that maybe as many as 500 sets of gear have disappeared, been stolen, been sold, all of those things point to the opportunities that Chief Butler talks about of educating firefighters, educating the public. A firefighter boots are probably a very valuable asset if you're running a farm and you need a new pair of boots. But it's a price to pay if you take those boots or you buy those boots from a firefighter, you're eliminating that firefighter's ability to do their job. And again, I don't say things to people that are intended to be disrespectful, but I think we have to continue to be very clear about where we're starting and what the truth is so that we can make real progress and not kid each other in terms of the challenges. The fire that resulted in the explosion, one of the things that's a takeaway, and Chief Butler and I and a fire chief from Minnesota, we fought a fire down in the market once before the gear had arrived, and we fought an interior fire without any protection. I mean, we did what was needed to do to help support the organization. But one of the things that struck me about this explosion was the amount of public that is within a few feet of that emergency. In the United States, we have been effective at teaching the community to stay back. Emergency situations, even a routine house fire, we don't know if there's a cylinder of gas or some other hazard. And in the case of that explosion, I believe it appeared to me that you had too much public in too close a proximity and just a different understanding of the risks involved, and doing a better job of creating a safety perimeter might have made a difference that day. Chief Butler?
I couldn't agree any more than that. That is that, you know, when I got on the call, Chief Perlman was just saying that education, he was talking about education for the responders. If there's one thing I could pack in my suitcase to carry, would be knowledge, education, and training, because it will drive everything else. It will drive, you know, the respect for the gear. It will drive respect for the equipment. You know, asking if their thoughts on the fire, the tanker fire in America. That tanker fire, if the media asked me about that here in the U.S., I would say, well, we need to do an after action report. We need to find out what happened. You know, it's an easy trap when the media asks what should have happened, could have happened, would have happened. Can't do it without facts. Where are we starting? To the point that was just being made. So just the mindset in continuing and encouraging the Western mindset of fire protection and community risk reduction. And Liberia is not in some other dimension or some other planet. It is a community of over 7 million people. You know, I mean, tons of people in Monrovia, where we are a large metro department, community, and we need to act like it and put the resources to protect that community. Housing, electrical wires, the electrical fires. We're dealing with lithium-ion batteries now. The batteries are a big deal in the Western world on lithium-ion battery fires, and so on. I could go on. All our risks out there, and the risks continue to get more. There are more risks happening. I'm not even starting with pre-hospital care, like Chief Perlman mentioned. But it starts by educating and training those responders, first and foremost, and then everything else kind of starts to fall into place.
So thank you, Chief Butler. Before we go, we just got like less than 6 or 7 more minutes to go, but I want to give every one of you a chance again, starting with Reverend Collins. Tell us what you're taking 9 minutes to tell what you hope to achieve, and Chief Perlman and Chief Butler, tell us one thing you guys will be recommending to the new government, and then from there we can just close from there because we have to go into the next segment of the show. Thank you.
Sure. So let me thank you again for the opportunity to be on here. I think that I'm very hopeful this time around. I know that a few years ago, we made huge investment, made trip to Liberia. Chief Parliament said government putting some skin in the game, they're putting some money, but those things disappeared after some time. I think what gives us excitement is that the one who has invited us has been our strongest partner through all the years. And so now that he is the president, president-elect, we are very hopeful that he will put a lot of skin in the game, will ensure that whatever the things that are taken on the ground will be protected. So that's one hope that I have, that the president himself, president-elect, has a huge interest in this process. And this is something that started with him. And I believe now that he is the president, we're going to have some opportunity to really make some impact. So that's the excitement that we have. When it comes to the Ministers Association, we see this opportunity, we see this time as a turning point in our country's history. So we will be there. We have applied for the vice president, applied for the president. We offer prayer with them. We encourage them to lead the country the right way. We want a peaceful country. We want corruption, not just a lip service, but really actions that we can take, because I think that's really hindering our country. So we will be bringing a message of peace and prosperity and love for the country and unity. And then we want to be involved with the rebuilding of the country, starting with the library in Kakata, that we are going to be visiting the land and see how we can. We do have some money to lay the foundation for the public library that we want to build right by BWI in Kakata. Again, thank you, folks. It's such an honor to be with all of you tonight.
Thank you, Reverend Collins. Chief Ken Perlman, it was great having you. I hope you come back too after your visit to Liberia and come back on the show. But just tell us what recommendation you will be making to the president-elect of Liberia.
Well, I think what I want to do is kind of like John mentioned, the assessment's going to drive a lot of that. What we want to do is we will probably focus first on what brings some firefighter safety, because as you recall, years ago we lost several firefighters in the line of duty. So that's generally where we would start, is looking at things that are potentially putting them at risk, so that we've got first responders. Our trip this week is first and foremost to celebrate who I call my Liberian father, and just to signal our support for his administration, and to the extent that we can get the assessment done and get that in his hands quickly. I would just remind your listeners that whatever condition we find the National Fire Service in, it didn't get that way in a week, and as much as we'd love to, we won't be able to solve the issues in a week.
Thank you, sir. And I hope when you come from Liberia again, as I said, Chief John Butler, it's good to see you. I read about you a long time ago when you were appointed as the fire chief for Fairfax County, and here you are today. Thank you for coming. But in line with Chief Perlman, what will be your recommendation to the new president of Liberia?
In that same vein, you can't improve what you don't measure. You can't fix what you don't know where you're starting. So I echo the intent and spirit of an assessment, and we will bite off, small. It's like eating the elephant, like the adage goes, one bite at a time, one step at a time. This is a labor of love. I love the Republic of Liberia. I know my brother Ken Perlman does as well. And this is coming from a deeper place than anything that you can imagine. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears for that beloved country and its people, my people. So I look forward to being on the ground and helping in any way. I haven't said no yet to Liberia. You ask and you shall receive from me. And that's how it's always been. That's how it'll be. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Winfred Russell, one of the bones behind all of this. Would you like to share something before we?
No, I think Chief Perlman wanted to say something.
I just want to ask a quick question. I'm sorry, it's off topic, but Lofa Julius, did we meet one time when I was in Liberia?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
That's his twin brother. That's his twin brother. He has a twin brother.
Okay.
I got a lot of twin brothers around, so could have been one of them.
Winfred, go ahead.
No, Chief Parliament, we've worked together very closely during your time here in Minnesota. I'm very, very, very grateful to you for all of what you've done for me personally, my career here. So I appreciate your service. We've worked very closely together when you were here, and you were a very, very, very good good guy. So looking forward to seeing you in Liberia again. Thanks for your service, and I know. Sorry for the back and forth, but we're glad that we finally put it all together. So I'd like to say thanks to my colleagues and my friends for ensuring that at least we can get something going. And like Dr. Peabody said, after your trip to Liberia, you and Chief Butler, if you guys can come back and share with us, what you learned. I know you're trying to be politically sensitive and careful, but that's okay. But I hope one of the recommendations would be that we build more fire stations. Because one fire station for a country of 5.5 million plus people in a metro area of almost 2 million, we just not cut it.
No, it doesn't.
Again, thanks to you all and my good friend and supporter and backbone, Pastor Collins. He's funded a lot of my campaigns, a lot of my trips back to Liberia, and a lot of work. Thanks for putting this together, putting this team together, and thanks for coming on the closing argument. We hope that that we have more time, but as Dr. Peabody said, we have other issues to discuss. But this was great. I think 45 minutes, of your time, and we're grateful for the time that you all spend here with us.
Safe flight to Liberia, and you guys have been heard all over the country, and even right now we have about 2,005 watching online, but all over the country you have been heard. So I guess the Liberian people have gotten the message, and they will be looking forward to see you guys. Safe flight, and Reverend Collins, Chief Butler, Chief Pretterman, great to see you. Enjoy your flight to Liberia.
Let me use this opportunity to also say thank to you guys for the initiative. We need it, and I pray that Liberians will actually take advantage of it and don't abuse it, to the fullest. I think we definitely do need it. So thank you guys.
Absolutely.
Thank you, and safe flight.
Thank you. See you all.
We'll turn this segment over to Chief Tomalin George. We have a special guest who will be coming, and then we'll continue the next segment of it.
Okay, guys, we back. Hope we had. That's the fire. That fire discussion should be a whole show because it is one of our challenges in the country. So I hope while they are in Liberia, I know the inauguration is Monday. Hope they can come and find a time and we can have them for the whole show because a lot of questions Liberians would like to ask. They would want to call in to ask them questions. So, but the first thing is good. They are going on the ground, and based on the assessment, when they get back to the country, they'll be able to address most of the issues. So, So we want to say thank you again, and we look forward to wishing them a safe trip to Liberia, and pray that they will have a great assessment, and we want to have our fire service for the challenges they face.
I'll be there too as well, so I can coordinate things. If there's a way to work with the guys at the studio there, I can get them in there to the studio and get there.
Yeah, Winfrey, I actually think it would be effective once they get back because I'm interested in getting almost like hearing from them on what their feedback will be, right? Because then they will exhaust literally everything that they've done, and they can come in. We can have like a full discussion on literally everything from recommendations to challenges to where we are. And where the thing
you were in here earlier, but I don't know if you're listening. But Tomalin asked a very important question, and actually got some news out of it. And that was that that they made a lot of donation, but I know that, the chief was trying to be politically correct. And
they don't know what a donation is.
Yeah, they made a he said what from 2012 to 2018 or something like that. They donated a lot of trucks, fire trucks, ambulances, and all. and
That's my
the
point.
uniform,
That's
500 pieces of uniform or something like that. I think you were saying, so.
Hopefully, we hope for the best. We hope for the best.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens. Yeah.
Okay, guys, people, viewers, we have there have been issued about this issue about tenure positions in our country. In fact, right now, people are asking that somebody tenure position should be scrapped. But some of them are needed for security reasons and for a lot of reasons. So, based on the fact people have been asking for, we discuss this. So, we brought in today a fellow from the Duke for Social and Economic Research, Dr. Ibrahim Al-Bakri, who will be helping us to discuss about the tenure positions in our country. There are several tenure positions, and tenure positions, I mean, you are given a position where you are nominated by the president and confirmed by the legislature, and you hold that position not at the pleasure of the president, but for the time created in the act. So if they give you, like, for instance, the GSC, I think the General Auditing Commission, when the president nominates you and the Senate confirms you, you are there for, I think, for 4 or 5 years, and you report, I think, to the legislature, whatever the case. So people have been discussing. There are several tenure positions that we need to be discussing today, and perhaps we can find out. He can help us to navigate and find out some of these positions, whether it should be tenure or not. So let us welcome Dr. Ibrahim Al-Bakri, of fellow from the Duke Institute for Social Economic Research. Dr. Nye, welcome to the closing argument. And I think whoever, as you know, some guys here, but I see Keff Hassan, Mr. Worth Russell, Ben Sanvee, Lofa Julius. But welcome to the closing argument. You are muted.
Okay. Thank you, Brother George, and thanks to the entire team. I was actually initially a bit angry about the timing, but then I listened to the fire presentation, and I was like, this is necessary. So I was learning a lot from the guys, and so that suited my tension a bit, because I was told initially that I was going to join at 9:30, and so I've been waiting up to 9:30, and then I was like, what are they doing? But then when I listened to the firefighters and the very insightful presentation on fighting fire and the contributions they intend to make to the country, and I was thinking that you could have even given them more time. So I'm quite certain now, and thanks for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you. We'll just go straight into it. Dr. Nye, these issues about tenure positions, can you just give us some outlook about the tenure positions, the importance, and I know some people say for independence, but just give us some outlook about the tenure positions in our country and the importance of these positions, and also whether some are necessary or not.
So the question should be first, what's the background? Why do they even give some positions tenure, and they don't give some tenure in the government? So we need to establish that context, the relevance first of the institutional setting, and then we can determine why tenure. So the agencies that are given tenure, some of them are born out of post-conflict negotiations, and they were meant to facilitate post-conflict processes, transitional processes. And the reason why you have to make them independent entities is to allow them to be mediators between political factions and actors. For instance, coming out of the war, you needed a commission to disarm and demobilize fighters. That kind of commission cannot be headed by the mainstream government bureaucracy, which for many reasons could have been factionalized because a particular political party has won. And so for other political factions and warring actors to engage productively and to be very confident and trust this commission, you needed to make it an independent commission. And so when an entity becomes an independent commission, and then you assign that entity a specialized public function or give that entity a public authority to deliver a particular public service or public good. In that context, to project that independence or to ensure that that independence is properly managed, you want to ensure that those who are heading those entities are independent of the political forces. And so this is where you determine that to make them independent, one of the variables or elements of independence is security in the job. And that security in the job could be determined by the tenure. That, okay, when this president is appointed, he or she is now going to be removed by any political faction or any political authority unless for a specified cause. For instance, violation of code of conduct, maybe health issue. And in our law, it says for a cause, and that cause must be specified. And so that's the context under which tenure positions are determined. But then this doesn't only happen in post-conflict context. So tenure positions are now being established across the world in every country for regulatory agencies that are meant to regulate certain public behavior, whether in business, in political life, or even in academia. So because you want these agencies to be independent of the political actors, you try to establish certain criteria through which their membership is selected. And one of the protection for tenure, for independence, is not only tenure security, it's also institutional independence and financial independence. Institutional independence allows them to operate without edicts from political factions or without interventions from political factions. And that is laid out in the rules. And financial independence allows them to operate, to control their own budget, so that the Ministry of Finance, which is most often and obviously controlled by the political party that is in power, does not determine the extent of resources that go to this particular agency. So in protecting or promoting financial and institutional independence, you also want to give the office holders tenure security. That is for their individual security in the position, so that the decisions that they make cannot be undermined by their affiliation or by their fear of those that may be looking over them. For instance, legislative officials or executive branch officials, so that they do not become victim of their decisions, because they are in a position where they have to make some serious decisions. For instance, those who are fighting corruption, they are going to be issuing investigation orders. They are going to be issuing orders for prosecution. But if I'm told by the president that if you prosecute my minister of finance, you will be removed the next day, then my security is undermined. And so tenure comes in that instance. And if I'm the election commissioner and I'm given instruction that the by-election in a particular district must be won by a certain candidate, other than that, I will be removed from office, then my security is undermined. So it is under this context, that security of tenure, which provides a certain year of holding the office, is provided for in some of our institutions. And these institutions, again, they are given this tenure to allow for the public service to be delivered, not just independently, but to even minimize the cost of decision making. For instance, the Governance Commission, which is given the authority to reform the institutions of government. Most of the decisions they make there, if you allow that decision to be left with the cabinet, it becomes costly for the cabinet in terms of time. And then it becomes also, when it goes through the legislative process, it becomes very costly. The decision-making becomes costly for both the executive and the legislature. So you give them the decision-making authority to decide which agency must be reformed. When they make this decision, they submit it to the political forces or the political actors for endorsement. So by that authority given them for assessment and for independent decision-making, they have, to a significant degree, saved enormous public resources, save time, and allow the political actors to focus on some other national issues. So that's the background for which tenure security is provided. And under our laws, we have several agencies, most of which we should not overlook the fact that some of these agencies came about as part of a transitional arrangement. And our transitional period was not only the Judy Bryan era, because although that's what we call the transitional government when the war just finished, 2003 to 2005. But our transitional period extends up to 2010, during which most of the national institutions were being reformed. The TRC was in existence. The National Commission on Disarmament, Demobilization, Rehabilitation, and Reintegration was in existence. So all of those processes, and then it was during that same time the LACC was established. The General Auditing Office was transformed into the General Auditing Commission, and so many agencies were created to facilitate the transition from a immediate post-war society to a post-conflict developing state. And so by the time we crossed 2010, when most of our debt was canceled by international organizations, we have stabilized our national institutions, and we're moving forward to our second post-conflict election. At that time, we're no longer technically considered a post-conflict state. Our transition was over. We have built significant institutional capability to now move into a state of a developmental state. And that's where we have been for many years until we somehow backpedaled in the last 6 years. And so we need now again to go back into reforming some of those institutions because they were significantly undermined, and the reform trajectory was immensely derailed from 2017 coming forward to 2023. And so we might as well rethink, maybe not to reform all of the institutions, but to recapacitate them and put them back on the trajectory. That also requires some degree of reform. And does tenure security matter moving forward? Yes, as long as you are continuing to have regulatory institutions, as long as you are continuing, you want to have institutions that have independent authority, then you providing the office holders some tenure security becomes a crucial element to projecting the independence of not just the institution, but even the office holder.
Okay, thank you. That's a good one. But okay, right now the issues that have been raised is that since the transitional period started, there have been some tenure officials who have been threatened. I mean, they have appeared that they have been threatened that they will be removed from the positions. So one of the issues that people have been raising that which of these institutions should really be tenured, or some of them tenure should be taken away from them. And like you said, regulatory institutions, like I would be fighting for the LTA. LTA, I think they should remain tenure position because they are regulatory agency. But other institutions like the General Auditing Commission, the Liberian Anti-Corruption Group, the Central Bank, the National Social Welfare Corporation, NEC, the National Elections Commission, and so far. But like Maritime is also a tenure position too, and other institutions. But in your own understanding, quickly, how can you which of the institutions should be tenured, or which should be script of tenure authority?
Well, Tomalin, this is a technical question, and it should not be based on an individual opinion. We must first agree what is the function of the institution. What role are they playing in the public, in the public governance, the public bureaucracy? It is when you establish the role they are playing, and then you determine what authority they need. Based on the authority they need and the role they are playing, then you can decide that they need tenure. Should I be opinionated just to answer your question? Yes, obviously, perhaps some agencies do not need to have tenure, or the office holders do not need tenure. And if an authority is just a business or commercial entity of the government that is collecting some revenue, and the president or the elected government wants to have control over that because they are bringing some revenue to the state, and then they have some commercial function, and they think that by keeping the officials there, even though they are ineffective, but they cannot determine a cause for which they should be removed, then that should be thought through technically and thoroughly. But a good number of the institutions that you mentioned, based on their existing laws, the public authority that they are given, and the functions they are expected to do, I would think that they should continue, the office holders should continue to have tenure security.
Thank you. Next question, Ben Sanvee.
Thank you, Dr. Nair. Thank you so much, and thank you for the for taking the time to speak with us. I want to go straight to my question. There were, and I agree with you. This has to be a holistic approach and a technical, and to look at things from a technical perspective, not necessarily an individual perspective, like, oh, this person is there and this person is doing well, so they should be tenure, right? Regardless of who is occupying a particular position, it has to be stated very clearly that if the institution, I believe only institutions that have national security risks or national security implications, and that includes financial, that includes integrity, that includes, in some cases, certain security institutions. I think everything else, majority of the government should not be tenured, because I think at the end of the day, when a president comes in, or when a new president comes in, he or she deserves the right, to be served by people whom they have confidence in. So when you talk about the issue of technicalities, I want to know right now, as it stands, it is hanging in the balance. I understand that there are some positions that are tenured that this government tried to remove the tenure from. I understand that a bill was passed, but the president having signed it, and from what I also understand is that, okay, when the president doesn't sign a bill, I mean, I think after a certain period of time, it becomes law, or something like that. I want to get your expert opinion on this. If you were advising the incoming administration, how do you think they will, or what steps do you think they should take to try to put this in context and to say, hey, this is what should be tenured, or what this is not what should be tenured? What would be your advice from a technical standpoint and from the professionals, from the background that you come from? What would be if President Barker were to call you and ask your opinion or your advice on this? How will you advise him to go about structuring these reforms that you were talking about?
So in institutional development, particularly when you are reforming a government, you want to first do what we call the mandate and functions review. So the first step will be to assess what mandate they have, the functions, and how they've been carrying out these functions. And that would tell us that given that they have this kind of mandate, if their role involves mediating political actors like the election commission, obviously those are the election commission, based on the public mandate they have, the commissioners at the commission must have tenure security. And so my advice would be to the incoming administration, first establish whether you need most of these agencies. Based on the responsibility or the manifesto you want to deliver, what kind of public bureaucracy do you need for these 21st century challenges? And then you begin now to review the mandates. And this is what was done at the Governance Commission. And as a disclaimer, I joined the Governance Commission in 2008 as an intern. I was an undergrad university student. And when I joined the commission in 2008, the commission was just doing this mandate and function review, looking at each public agency. And then they determined that the National Ministry of National Security was not needed for Liberia's post-conflict development. And then the commission determined, based on the mandate and function review, that the National Bureau of Investigation, there was an agency called the NBI, wasn't needed in Liberia's new transition. And then the commission also determined that there was not a need for a separate Bureau of Budget and a separate Ministry of Finance, because the Bureau of Budget was making the national budget, and then there was a Ministry of Planning designing the National Development Plan, but not speaking to the Bureau of Budget. So the national plan was not corresponding with the Bureau of Budget, and the Ministry of Finance was making expenditure not in line with the national plan developed by the Ministry of Planning. So the Governors Commission did a global assessment of all of these agencies in the national planning, budgeting, and financial sector. And so the decision was eliminate the Bureau of Budget, merge its function to the Ministry of Finance, eliminate the Ministry of Planning and Economic Affairs, bring the function of planning and budget together, and have a single Ministry of Finance, but then separate the Revenue Generation Agency. That's how the LRA came about. And so we did that mandate and function review. Okay, let me not claim that we did. I was an intern at that time. I was following those who were doing it. We were holding their files behind them. And so we followed that process. So this is how the National Bureau of Investigation, Ministry of National Security, they were all eliminated, and their functions, the key ones, merged with NSA, Ministry of National Defense. That's how we have the new National Defense and Security Act. So what we need at this stage, 14 years after 2010, after that transition, with the emerging global challenges, we are having mass migration coming down southward from northern West Africa to down southward. We are having major economic challenges. We are having climatic conditions that we haven't experienced a long time. We have a massive youth population, around 70%, which could be a dividend or a bomb, a demographic bomb or a demographic dividend. So we need now to assess the national challenges and establish public institutions to respond to those challenges. This is the challenge of the new administration. And looking at tenure, again, coming back to your question directly, Brother Sanvee, the advice I would give to the current administration is you now want to assess all of these agencies. Which one do you need to respond to the challenges of the society? Do we still need a Governance Commission? Do we still need the Law Reform Commission? Do we need the General Auditing Commission? Do we need the Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission, even though the Liberia Anti-Corruption was existing, but they couldn't spot corruption cases that the US government was spouting and sanctioning our officials? Because the US government only came in when they saw the national institutions were not delivering. The US government would never sanction in a country where officials are being held accountable, unless you commit a crime against the American government. But when you are committing a crime against your own country and there's a national response, there wouldn't be sanction against your country. So now is the question of, are these institutions, we have all of them, General Auditing Commission, Internal Audit Agency, Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission, we have the Ministry of Justice. Where were these agencies when these alleged crimes were being committed that some of our fellow Liberians have been sanctioned by the US? So it's the question of their institutional vitality or the credibility of these institutions. So we need to ask these questions. Do we need them? If we need them, what new mandate do they need? And if these are the new mandate, then do we need to give them tenure security? So these are questions that we need to make. I mean, we need to answer. Your question need to be answered after asking several technical questions and doing several assessments.
Thank you. Next person.
Welcome, Councilor Yakula Kokwa. Welcome to this closing argument. Happy to see you.
Where you been?
Thank
you. So, you've been on honeymoon. Sorry, you've been on honeymoon.
Yeah.
So we'll go to Russell. Russell, go ahead. We have a question too. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks. And Dr. Nya, it's great to meet you and be in touch with you. This is wonderful. A lot of great information. So I appreciate your insight and the information you have to share. I mean, one of the first questions that come to mind. Oh, and Mariah, congratulations, by the way. Great to see you too as well.
Thank you, my brother.
But one of the questions that come to mind, Doc, is that so what does the law say? What does the tenure law that was passed? I mean, what does it say? And I know you. Someone asked the question to us in sort of a roundabout way, and what sort of criteria that was laid out in the law, and if we were to follow the law as it was written, I mean, are we still going to be having, some of these problems? Because for me, from my vantage point, it's sort of interesting that you're doing your mandate and function review exercise. You recommended the closure of planning and merge it with finance, and you eliminated NBI and put some other security departments or agencies within the Ministry of Defense and all of that. I mean, you did all of the sort of realignment and recalibration and all of that. How come do you guys miss the Ministry of Information, Cultural Affairs, and Tourism? How come you guys didn't take Cultural Affairs and Tourism out of that? So I would just stop there.
Okay, so this is a very good question, and I will give you the direct answer, and I will give you the background to that. We didn't miss the Ministry of Information, Cultural Affairs, and Tourism. In fact, there was a discussion at the Governors Commission that the country doesn't need a Ministry of Information, and every agency should have a very good, competent spokesperson, and the Office of the President a very good and competent spokesperson. So the mandate and functions review was done at the Ministry of Information. Well, that debate about dissolving the ministry entirely and separating the functions didn't hold. People in the cabinet, when the Governors Commission made the initial proposal, people in the cabinet said, well, we still need the ministry. But then the Governors Commission's second proposal was the establishment of the Liberia National Tourism Authority, because tourism is a very significant and a good revenue generation and job creation sector. But the Ministry of Information of Liberia is overshadowed by government propaganda. And so every time you went to the Ministry of Information, Cultural Affairs, and Tourism, you see a lot of people, they only focus on the Thursday press conference where government ministries are invited to speak to the public on what they are doing. So there's a tourism department, but all of these departments, tourism, cultural departments, they've all been overshadowed by the propaganda arm of the government. So the recommendation was each ministry maintain an effective public information department that will speak to the public on sectoral issue. And then the government will maintain a central spokesperson, government spokesperson at the presidency. So the act was drafted, creating the Liberia National Tourism Authority, to remove that from the Ministry of Information, and then have an independent tourism authority to regulate the tourism sector. And I can tell you that this act was first presented to the cabinet in 2013. I think at that time, it was probably my first time entering the cabinet of President Salif. I was holding Professor Sawyer's bag, his files behind him, and we went to the cabinet. He presented 3 different proposals, and one included the creation of the Liberia National Tourism Authority. This was actually in August 2013. And that act has lingered since then. And I don't know what has happened to it. I haven't been in the government for several years. So I don't know what happened to the National Tourism Authority Act. And then there was also another act to create the Center for Culture, and which will actually, because at that time when this reform was being done, there was this controversy around Kenneja. So many demonstrations around the removal of Kenneja, public disagreements. And so then we needed a national center, a center for Liberian culture, and a separate institution to manage all of the cultural heritage sites, locating various cultural sites along with the tourism authority, and then even promoting Liberian languages. I have an observation that we are moving perhaps to the next 30, 40 years. Most of those born, majority of those born in the 2000 would not be able to speak, a majority of them would not speak Liberian languages. And so one of the proposals at the GC was this Center for Liberian Language and Culture will begin to promote Liberian languages. So the Governors Commission didn't skip that. That proposal is still on hand. And I believe that I still have the draft of that law, the National Tourism Authority Act. I still have the draft. And it went close to being passed in the legislature. But when a new legislature is seated, all of the bills that the previous legislature had had to be resubmitted before they can make a move on it, even if it was submitted on the eve of the closure of the legislature. So the new session of the legislature has to receive a new submission. So I actually don't know what happened to it.
So could you share that a copy of the draft that you have?
I can check in my files. I believe I will have it. I can check in my files. In fact, so many things were done at the Governors Commission, and when President Weah issued the executive order on the transition, I went back to my files and I found that the Governors Commission, we actually worked on the Presidential Transition Bill, a law in 2017 called the Presidential Transition Bill. And that bill was submitted to the Executive Mansion. And so when I read the executive order, it reminded me of the languages in the bill. It was just the same. But then the Executive Mansion didn't move on that bill when President Salih was leaving the Executive Mansion. So the next stage was to take that Presidential Transition Act to the legislature to start the legislative process and then come back to the president to make it a law. But now when the transition time came, there was no law. So they had to take elements of that bill and then draft it into an executive order. Alongside that law, what I found also, which I'm preparing to work with some members of the incoming legislature to submit to the floor, is the Former President Act. We don't have, what we have is the legislation on some pension with the National Social Security, but immunities of the former president. The Governors Commission drafted a bill on the Former President Act. The former president should be entitled to an office, state security, and a budget to run their office as a former president, according to that law. And this is common practice across the world. So we drafted that bill. So I found that as well. And I've already had a meeting with one of the new senators, and we're going to push this. So I'll be pushing this from outside of the government, not within the government anymore.
Yeah. Interesting. Lofa Julius.
Let me by the way, welcome Dr. Nay. Let me use this time with the fact that Mariah is the only lady on here. I will yield my time to her so that she could go. Just the fact that she's the only female. I will come hopefully after her.
Luva, put her in the middle and move Keff from down there, man.
Oh, thank you.
I would want you to tell Mariah to ask a question, not because she's the only female, but because she is competent enough to ask a very good question.
Well, no, I mean, I said to have her to go before me, not to have her to ask a question, but just having her go before me.
Oh,
that's the reason why I asked that, not because of
No, just because the ANC system, man.
Oh, Lord Jesus.
Go ahead,
But
Mariah.
Kev, yeah, CDC center do.
Exactly.
Get me. Right, you can't let that one start small now. Let me explain.
I mean, actually, I gotta rub it in. But thanks, guys. And Dr. A, how are you? I wanted to ask just a quick question before my actual question. The former president bill, does it also cover retirement or retirement benefits, or is it under the pension law?
I think most of it will be determined under the pension law, but significant portion of that law are about having an organized structure for the former president, like an office of the former president, and what the government can support the office of the former president with to keep the prestige of that office. And then I think there is a portion about the former president receiving about 40% of the salary of the sitting president. And so if that becomes law, for instance, and it includes also the former vice president. I remember there were times the incoming president, Ambassador Joseph Boakai, complained that he wasn't receiving his benefits. And I don't know why that was happening, but this law is saying that the former president will receive 40% of the salaries of the sitting president. Yeah. But it is the detail is actually in the pension law. Yeah.
Okay. My question actually was about something you had mentioned concerning integrity institutions like GAC being, in existence, but then the Americans have to do all this work around fighting corruption, and they usually do it when the integrity institutions are not working within the country. Um, my question is around, and then you asked if we should keep these institutions, or for us to ask ourselves if we should keep these institutions. I kind of want to divert the conversation a bit from the institutions to reasons of why these institutions become weakened or dormant. And so we've seen that presidents would appoint their friends or their stooges or people who they have control over at these institutions, or governments will cut the budgets of these institutions that are supposed to
Exactly.
have them operate effectively. So do you think the problem is with the institutions themselves or with the leadership? Because if the president is not appointing cronies and friends to these institutions, or people with who they have control over, or if the president and the lawmakers are not passing budgets that have drastically cut the budgets of these institutions, would it be more effective? Are we putting the expectations on the institutions or on the person who sits in the driver's seat? Because it appears to me that it's the president, which again comes down to the powers of the president, giving the appointing powers, giving the legislative agenda, giving the control over the Ministry of Finance and the budget processes to ensure that these institutions, all of our integrity institutions, whether it's GSC, LSCC, I mean, we named the rest of them, IAA, are actually empowered, either with the budget they need to operate or with the autonomy they need to operate without having friends and family and cronies and people that control in these positions. How do we balance that out in terms of evaluating the effectiveness of these institutions?
Thank you, Mariah, and excellent question. Human by nature, we do not want restrictions and we don't want to be restrained. And those in political power, particularly, do not want any constitutional or institutional restraints on their power. And so, in that light, a president appointed would want to appoint people to institutions that are meant to countervail their authority, to weaken them. But then we have a system, a putative system of checks and balances. We have a legislature. This is why when the origin of the system of checks and balance in government from the French philosopher Charles Baron de Montesquieu, that for a government to function well, all powers should not rest in a single authority. There should be other authorities to check the powers. This is how when the French Revolution took place, the executive branch was created, the judiciary and the legislature to check the powers of others. President Weah or President Salif were elected as political leaders. Politicians by nature, they do not want any countervailing power, but constitutionally they must be forced or compelled to submit to the countervailing authority. When President Weah started a systematic process of weakening the integrity institutions, he was assisted and emboldened by a legislature that became complicit. So we cannot blame him alone. So it was the ecosystem of the political leadership that was responsible for this. For instance, at the Governors Commission, they appointed a semi-literate person to head or to participate in the process of reforming governing institutions, critical policy engagement processes. And this person went to the legislature, and the legislature asked this person for their credential. They reviewed, and 3 days later confirmed this person, and some of the senators went behind this person and said, look, we help you. Now you got a job. Here are my people. Carry them with you. That happened at the Governors Commission. Then they did appointment at the Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission, a partisan appointment. The Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission, the act of the commission and like the Governors Commission, both acts says commissioners at the Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission and the commissioners at the Governors Commission shall be apolitical, shall have no political affiliation, so that the agenda against corruption cannot take a partisan nature. And then you take a partisan directly involved with the activities of your political party, send them to the Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission. Who is going to be investigating? His fellow partisans. And so they didn't, and then the Senate sat again and confirmed these persons, these people. Then it went to the Anti-Corruption Commission. It became a toothless institution. But if the commissioners at the LACC and the GAC were appointed on the basis of competence and merit base, went through the thorough scrutiny of the Senate, and they went to these agencies and gave them the financial autonomy that they needed and sufficient resources to function, they would have delivered on their mandate. But
so
again,
in essence, I think a follow-up.
Yeah, come in, Murad, come in.
Well, so I say, in essence, the effectiveness of these institutions depend on the president, on the executive and the legislature, on the president and the lawmakers. That's what I was trying to get to.
Some to a greater extent, and also those that are appointed there based on their qualification. But mind you,
right.
For these agencies to function, they need two key things: institutional independence and financial independence. And that financial independence also means adequate financial resources, so that the Ministry of Finance cannot determine and control their budget. They need that financial autonomy. And most of these agencies, like the judiciary, they are in their mandates, they said they should have financial autonomy. One of the challenges with the National Elections Commission is financial autonomy. Though the law calls for the Election Commission to be financially autonomous, it is not. When the commission makes its budget, the Ministry of Finance is slashing the budget continuously. But then we understand when there are fiscal constraints, when the government is generating limited revenue, then you have to make some choices. But in making that choices, you must give the Election Commission their finances long ahead of time. So other countries like Nigeria, they have worked around this. In Nigeria, under their Electoral Commission law, the Election Commission must receive 100% of the budget they need for the election 1 year to the election, to the general and presidential election. 1 year to. But our Election Commission was saying, while we're in the campaign of the first round, was saying that they weren't sure that they will have the money for the runoff. So that tells the extent to which they were financially dependent on the sitting government.
Larry?
Yeah, let me say good evening to everyone. Doc Nyen, I'm a big fan of yours. I like the work you're doing. And I'm so glad that the closing argument brought you here this evening to kind of enlighten us and to kind of educate a lot of the Liberian people in terms of what this whole tenure position thing is all about. So here's my question to you. Do you think tenure positions create sort of a moral hazard? And what I mean by that is people become complacent in the job because they know that you cannot easily fire them. So they don't really have to perform. For example, take the central bank, right? The central bank, when you look at the law that created the central bank, the act, the central bank is responsible for keeping inflation low, boosting employment, making sure that monetary policy work in terms of helping the people. But when you look at the inflation rate, the Liberian dollar has lost so much value over the past year. So you look at the person who is heading the central bank, they don't seem to be the right fit for that position. But I understand the concept of central bank, like the Federal Reserve Bank. The whole concept is you don't want politicians influencing the printing of money and influencing the central bank, because President Trump tried to do that over here in the US and fired Jerome Powell. So my question to you, do you think it creates this risk of people becoming complacent in the job they're doing? And a follow-up real quick is, should we do away with tenures? Because while it seemed to work in developed countries, it doesn't seem to have been very productive in places like Liberia. What do you think?
Thank you, Larry. Thank you. Indeed, there is a serious moral hazard, and there's complacency, and people are like, well, this job I have it for 4 years. But the laws also require that, also provides that, particularly from the Governors Commission, the Central Bank, the LACC, that a commissioner, like the Supreme Court, a judge can be removed for a cause. In some instances, they say proven misconduct. And some of the causes could be indeed underperformance, but you just need to prove that. You just need to prove that through a due process. Again, I answered this question earlier. we need to assess the institutions and put their mandate, juxtapose their mandate with the public functions that they have, and then we determine what kind of security they need to deliver this mandate. And if that security requires tenure, then we give them tenure. If we think the maritime commissioner or the central bank governor, if we think the maritime commissioner or the central bank governor doesn't need a tenure to be independent, then we remove that. If it is not working, what do we need? Perhaps we need more capable staff in these agencies, and not because somebody has tenure, they should just hire their brothers and sisters, and then they should just stay in the position. Again, another problem is supervision. When you have a supervisory authority over these agencies, most of these agencies with tenure, they have boards of commissioners, and then they have executive director. But then they report to legislative committees. And these legislative committees, in addition to countervailing powers, have oversight powers. And these legislative committees, if they are strong enough and technically engage in these agencies, they can easily determine who is working and who is delivering more effectively, and who deserves to stay in their position for the 5 years or the 6 years, or who deserve to be removed based on poor delivery or performance. So it's a full cycle, Brother Larry.
Thanks, Doc.
Yeah, Peabody.
Dr. Yang, great. I've been listening to you. You've been just touching on a lot of important issues here. My question to you, you seem to have a lot of insight when it comes to these tenure positions. I want to just go straight to the point. I want to be blunt here. Area like fishery, where you have, I think the lady, what's her name, Emma Glasgow or something, who's in charge. Do we need a tenure position? Does she need to be there? What do you think of that? Do we need tenure position again for fishery?
Well, we should not personalize. Let's not personalize it. Let's let's focus on the institutional.
Yeah, I am, but as the mark of respect, calling the boss name, I'm not. But brother, do we need?
Peabody.
Yes.
What's the fishery authority doing? I mean, are they regulatory authority? Are they commercial? And if
more
you
commercial.
if they're more commercial and you think it's a business entity that needs somebody to turn the cash around and bring more money to the government quick, as fast as possible, and you think the current commissioner or head is not producing, then you want to advise the government to remove tenure. But one of the reasons, somebody talked earlier about removing some of those people. I don't think we should focus on the individuals. When we start focusing on individuals, we lose the focus on the long-term gains and the long-term goals of our country. So let's leave Ms. Glasgow out.
Okay.
I haven't worked for.
Is that a tenure? Do you think, as an expert,
may I respond to that?
Position? I'm trying to learn from you.
Okay. Again, we cannot make that determination on the show whether the fishery agency needs tenure. We have to review their mandate, and then we can determine that, because if they are regulatory and we think that regulatory function affects political interest or needs political support, then we make them independent. Because the reason you want to make positions independent agencies is because you want to insulate them or give them the protection from political manipulations. For instance, you don't want to make the LACC a revolving door where the president takes over today and then open the door quickly. All of you get outside. I'm going to put commissioners here that will protect me and protect my credibility and wouldn't come to pursue me and my officials. So you don't want to create a revolving door at all of these major agencies. At the Ministry of Internal Affairs, of course, you don't need tenure at the Ministry of Internal Affairs. That's a mainstream public bureaucracy whose function is to promote the objectives and goals of the sitting president within the county. You don't need tenure at the Ministry of Finance. That's a mainstream public bureaucracy. But obviously, you need tenure security at the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court is countervailing the powers of the legislature and the president. You need tenure security for those that are holding positions, perhaps, I'm not even perhaps, at the LACC and the GAC. Who knows? Maybe I'm not saying. I don't want to I don't want to buy into the conspiracy theory that auditors were killed here. Who knows whether they were being killed because they couldn't be removed? We don't know. But we should not buy into that conspiracy. So I'm just saying.
But those auditors,
yeah,
they
go
didn't
ahead,
have
Mariah.
tenure. I think
They didn't have tenure, right?
No. They didn't have tenure. The officials still do. But I wanted to go back to Fishers because
IAA does have tenure. Yeah.
They had.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So the question he raised about fisheries, I think we talked about it depends on the mandate. Looking at fisheries' role with maritime, with the Coast Guard, the regulatory role that they also play. I think that's again going back to the act. We can look at that, but I think that's why it's important to also keep them independent and also keep them with tenure. It's also a high revenue or should be a high revenue generating agencies. Most high revenue generating agencies also have tenure because you want to keep, as he was saying, that
Keff, they're
consistency.
laughing. Why Keff laughing at this particular topic?
Because Maria defending that fishery for you.
You can't have you can't have a quick turnover because sometimes of course with these high revenue generating agencies and also regulatory bodies, sometimes there is required that they have tenure and independence. The whole concept of tenure is independence and autonomy.
Exactly.
When people don't have the independence and the autonomy to make decisions to run an institution and they're subject to will and pleasure, it affects the country in the long run. And so it's to take away the will and pleasure component because the president's appointments, most of the president's appointments are will and pleasure. So there are certain appointments that he would make because he's supposed to appoint to the executive. You can't have the judiciary appointing to the executive or the lawmakers appointing the executive. But there are certain component of the executive which they call the acts, agencies, and commissions that are supposed to have tenure, but the president must appoint to them. So even though the president is appointing to them, you don't want them under his will and pleasure. And that's why tenure is there to give them autonomy and to give them independence. And that's where some of these institutions come in.
Have the fishery always been the, let me come on my second question, Dr. Man. Have fishery always been the tenure position?
Well, fishery is new. It was started.
That's where you see some problem. Right?
Yeah, the Fishery Act actually was passed around 2017, 2016,
in fact, this government is the first government that has really.
Yeah, and so it is new. So we have to give some valued evaluation to what tenure has done in the first 5 or 6 years. But let me come to some historical context. This entire debate about tenure, people holding tenure positions, started in 2018 when President Weah took over. 2 weeks into his inauguration, he invited the Governance Commission to make a presentation on the state of reform. And I was fortunate to have been selected by then acting chair Otello Gonga to be part of the delegation. And around the table at the executive mansion, President Weah posed a question. He said, we're about to appoint our people, but every agency we go to, for instance, LACC, Maritime, every agency we go to, they say the people have tenure. Why we can't appoint our people to the positions? So we were two that responded to the question. Councillor Bono Vama, who's now the Secretary General of the Bar Association, and myself. And we informed the president that currently the president of Liberia has over 2,000 positions to appoint to. And outside of the tenure positions, you can appoint all of your people to these positions, and you can still run an effective government. And those in tenure will only help you if you give them more resources and you allow them to function independently. There were people around the table in the president's cabinet who said, Mr. President, those tenure positions were created to give people, to protect friends in job. And another person there said, Mr. President, if we are not satisfied, let's go ahead and appoint our people. Whoever feel cheated should go to court. But we're going to, and that's the advice they gave the president. And we told the president, Mr. President, don't proceed that way, because they would have appointed people to Election Commission, LACC, GAC, the GC, and all of these agencies, and remove people who were in tenure. And that very year, they started to do that, to do appointment in tenure positions. Some of them went to court. But then they speaked when Isaac Jackson, the then maritime permanent rep to the
IMO.
To IMO, went as far as the Supreme Court trying to protect his position. But then he lost that case because there were some legal technicalities. But then there was a lady at the National Lottery whose case she took to the Supreme Court, and she won the case against the presidency. So that was the beginning of the embarrassment the president faced because of poor advice from his immediate cabinet. So our advice then to the president was, pay attention for now, appoint to positions in which you already have the authority. Over 2,000. That's from city mayor to Jennings City in Grand Cru, where the president may not even visit for 6 years until they leave. They have the right to appoint. And then they also appoint district commissioners in Bapolu, Grand Cape Mount, across the country. There are about 200 districts the president appoint. They have city mayors to city courts. So we told the president, and then we told the president that there was the Local Government Act, which was already prepared to allow the citizens to elect city mayors. And then we already have around 200 plus cities in this country. In Grand Cru, the latest census, I think there are less than 100,000.
Grand Cru has the most.
Grand Cru has 31 cities.
Can you imagine?
31 cities.
Yeah, the most.
And all of these cities have mayors, various positions in the city administration on the Ministry of Internal Affairs payroll, but they are generating no revenue. So that's a burden to the state. So we had the Local Government Act presented to the president. But guess what happened? The Local Government Act went to the legislature, and in negotiation between the executive and the legislature, they removed the election of local officials because that gave them opportunity for the dishing out of political patronage. The president, and then they told the president, Mr. President, you want to allow for election of city mayor and superintendent where we're supposed to be appointing our party officials to help us in the campaign? So they stopped that. What happened? What happened last year? 1 year to the election, the president appointed scores of district commissioners across the country, who automatically, in the end, turned out to be CDC foot soldiers campaigning. It is his right. He is the president. But does that provide for efficient use of public resources? Or does that help to provide for effective local government? No. And so we still want to present and submit moving forward to the incoming government to convince them that we need to eliminate the number of cities, the number of local structures, to maintain the 15 county capitals, and then Pinsville and Ganta, 2 cities that are commercially viable. And then the standards are there. Any other locality that want to apply for city status, these are the standards you should meet. And then the local people can elect. If you are electing the city of Monrovia, the mayor of Monrovia, and then you have a city council providing oversight authority, you won't find it. If a mayor knows that he has to be removed at the next election, you won't find the amount of filth you find in Monrovia today. So when the administration took place, we had these discussions around tenure, around local government. So many discussions were held, but we lost the debate. We didn't lose the debate because we didn't have the right argument. We lost the debate because there were people around the president who had different interests, and they won us. But then we have not lost totally. We are still fighting for good governance in this country.
Well, good luck. The rescue mission got plenty of people that are coming to apply for the jobs too. So
we are going to continue to fight.
I agree with you, Doc. I agree with you. I support you 100%. I support you 100%.
Robert, come in.
I support you, Doc. You got my 100%.
Only George. Only George. I know.
Kev, wait.
Kev, wait, yeah. This will be my. This will be my only question. But Kev, why you laughing at this? But anyway,
the guys didn't know I laugh before.
But look, Doc, it's great to interact with you. I do not know you personally. I have heard of you, but it's great to be interacting with you. But I as I listened to you, you mentioned a few words here that I want to repeat: job security, independence, insulate, and all of these things, right? And I think Larry has a very important question. If all of this boils down to independence, and you talked about assessments, right? And so I think you would agree with me that if we did an independent assessment, right, void of political correctness, and I think we all would agree that not a single one of these agencies will pass any effective test. Okay, none of them will pass any effective test, right? I do not think they've been effective. You mentioned, I think you made a salient point when you mentioned the anti-corruption commission, and since the establishment of that agency, how effective have they been when it comes to fighting corruption in government? In as much as you talk about the independence, functionality, we know that these are technically political appointments. When these appointments are made by the leaders, technically they should not be working at the will and pleasure, but we know that's the opposite of that. They do work at the will and pleasure of the president, which is the reason why the Anti-Corruption Commission, for instance, have been ineffective, right? And so my question to you is, if these agents, and by the way, I do agree that we should start, electing our mayors and so forth and so on. And I do think we have the money and resources to do that, so that they do the people's job. But if all of this boils down to independence, and this effectiveness and everything else, if these have not worked, my question to you from a professional place, how do we proceed? Because to be honest with you, you can make all of the recommendations that you want to make to the incoming government. This incoming government is not a new government. This incoming government was there for 12 years. And it was under their watch when these very discussions about turning positions were held. 12 years is no easy fix. They are coming back again, and they have been given a 6 years mandate. If it didn't work 12 years, didn't pass the test under George Weah for 6 years, what encourages you, based on your recommendation, that anything will happen for the next 6 years? And I want you to be blunt and honest in answering this question.
Thank you, Brother Robert. And again, I go back to the answer that I provided to Brother Larry. We are in the 21st century, facing myriad challenges, emerging new challenges, and old challenges remain. So the task for institutional reform is to establish the kind of institutions that we need to respond to this task. The role of government is to address societal problems. Do we have the institutions for our current problems? The massive crisis with drug abuse. What kind of institutions that we need? So now we need to first ask, are these institutions effective, and do we still need them? And if we don't need them, we eliminate them, remove them, and create new ones to respond to the challenges. That was my submission in the beginning. And so that's what I will even tell the current government. Do we still need the internal audit agency? Do we need the LACC alongside the internal audit agency, the GAC, and then the Legislative Committee on Public Accounts? How are they speaking to each other? And 4 agencies fighting corruption: Internal Audit Agency, Liberal Anti-Corruption Commission, General Auditing Commission, the Public Accounts Committee of the Legislature, and then to add the favor on the Ministry of Justice, the Prosecution Department. But why things still continue to remain the same? So now is the time to assess the challenges and look at the capability and mandates of this institution and tell ourselves whether we have been on the right path. That's the essence of doing reform, and that's the essence of doing evaluation, to look at what has been working and what hasn't been working. And so we cannot continue to function on 19th century institutional models to address 21st century institutional problems. In fact, the challenges that we encounter at the turn of the century are no longer the same. Climate change has become a huge problem. Drug addiction. So the problems, we must now establish new institutions or reform institutions based on our challenges that we are facing and based on the aspirations that we have as a country, or Robert.
So let me follow up.
Does that answer your question?
No, well, I would take that because the other guy's got to come in. Let me follow up real quick. So,
Okay.
so we have to do the assessment, and we've got to make the decision as to whether or not we need these institutions or not. Let me ask you a
Yeah.
question. If those clubs with the authority to do the assessment have read the assessment, know exactly what needs to be done, but they have failed to make the right decision, what then do we do?
That is a political question, and some questions can only be answered through the political process. And I believe when Liberians voted uh, on November 14th to elect a new government, they were providing political answer to some of those questions because it wasn't happening. And that's the same political answer they provided in 2017. And so some of these things, what then can we do when those in authority cannot function? The Liberian people have only one element, one weapon for accountability, unfortunately, and that weapon comes only once in 6 year period. So when they are not functioning, when the people are not delivering, the political answer to that is through election. When you go to the election, you make your decision. Two times, Liberians have told us that they can change a ruling party. And what they expect of the ruling party is to deliver on the constitutional promises that this country hold for its citizens. Yeah.
Thank you.
But may I, Lofa, before you come in, Tomalin, the issue around um, autonomy political appointments, you did mention earlier, the president will appoint people he knows to these
Yeah.
positions.
Yeah.
As you said, it's human nature. He will appoint people he believes will protect him or
Yeah.
her. The president will appoint someone who they believe will have their interest and that of their people around them, right? How do we, because even if we say, and of course we have a weak legislature, hopefully this new one is stronger. We've had a weak legislature that was partisan. How do we then say, for example, regardless of what we do, once the president is the one appointing to these positions, there's some kind of affinity there, there's some friendship
Exactly.
there, there's some expectation of protection there. So do we then say, like, for example, the way they elect attorney generals in the US, do we put up these positions for elected positions like we put up for mayor? Do we have the funds and the resources to elect heads of our integrity institution? Or maybe even if we're not electing all of them in different elections, maybe we elect the leadership of the commissioners on one ballot. So you have a group of five that are
Good.
up for elections and a group of five and you elect that five or whatever. My point is because of the relationship that will exist between the president and whoever he or she appoints to these integrity institutions, it makes it a tad bit difficult to expect one 100% total autonomy. And also, the appointees are still also dependent on the president and his Ministry of Finance for, as you mentioned, their budget to operate. So if they don't want to be lame ducks, if they don't want to be appointed to positions that they cannot operate effectively because they're not getting the budget that they require or need from the Ministry of Finance, then they have to go back to suck up to the president and Minister of Finance, who also works for the president. It becomes
Yeah.
a vicious cycle. So,
Exactly.
what do you think is going forward, some of the recommendations, maybe to the incoming and saying, okay, if we're going to be looking at putting up mayor positions for elections, do we put up integrity institutions or heads of integrity institutions for elections as well? Because then they know, like lawmakers, they're accountable to the
To
people
the people.
and they
Exactly.
have this autonomy and independence that's not tied to the relationship or friendship or proximity or partisanship with whoever is the president.
Thank you, Moriah. And like you started with your premise, obviously, if I'm appointed or I'm elected to a position and I have the authority to appoint people, I will go after who I know. It's human nature. For you now, if you are the president of Liberia, I believe you will call me and ask me for my CV. And so no one will hold that, no one will hold that against you because you will be going after people
We've
that you
come a
know.
long way.
Yeah, so this is it, Moriah. What other countries have done and they have proven to be successful. For instance, Namibia, for their integrity institutions, you apply openly, the vacancies are out, you apply, and then you apply to a technical committee made up of civil society, members of the legislature, and other organizations that review the CV, and they send the long list to the legislature, to the parliamentary committee. And then this parliamentary committee will scrutinize this list and then select 3 persons and send to the president. The president is compelled to select one from that list of 3. So they gave you option. These are the people we have selected based on the merit-based process that has been established by the law. That's how they select the election commissioners of Namibia. That's how they select the public prosecutor of Namibia. Let's come to South Africa, how they do it. South Africa does it the same way, but for South Africa, they call open parliamentary section where you face an interview in the parliament. This was why the public protector of South Africa a few years back, Professor Tudi Madusila, told Jacob Zuma, indicted Jacob Zuma, and told the parliament to hold Jacob Zuma accountable for money that he personally used to build his private estate. And that was part of the process that led to President Jacob Zuma's downfall, because this woman was selected through a merit bill. She was selected.
But that process is in the current LCC Act, right?
Yes, that's what we have started. We have started something like that. With the new LCC Act, it holds some promises for some independence, because you are going to apply to an independent committee, scrutinize you, the legislature scrutinize you, the president appoint you, then you go back to the legislature. So it saves, it will help us save a lot of money instead of holding public election for LACC commissioners, public election for GAC commissioner, public election for integrity agency, national audit agency commissioner. So open the process, establish an independent committee to review the nominations, the applications, go back to the legislature review, submit names to the president, then the president appoint. So it goes through a thorough process of assessment. So South Africa, all of their institutions, it's called the Chapter 9 institutions. That's how they select the commissioners. And so they are able to exercise some level of independence. I'm not saying that they are perfect, they are angels, and they cannot be manipulated, but to some degree, they have some independence that they're able to project. Yeah, the last question, Murayo.
Yeah, these integrity institutions, I have my first degree in economics, but I wouldn't pretend to know finance or econ as much. But it seems we're having some of these integrity institutions overlapping. So, for example, you have the IAA and you have the GAC, the internal audit and the general audit. Is it part of the recommendations or plans to kind of put some of these institutions together to work under one, or is there a reason that we're separated in the first place? You would know, giving your experience with these governance institutions, to minimize not just the number of agencies and institutions, but also to ensure effectiveness and just have, if it's auditing, every body or every institution on the audits or responsible for audits will be under this audit institution and stuff like that. Is that something that's part of?
Yeah, so some are overlapping, but the GAC and the RAA may appear to be overlapping, but they are not. They have separate functions. The RAA is for prevention and compliance within the entity. The GAC is after the action. They come to audit. So the RAA is there before you do a procurement. They are there to make sure that you follow all of the rules. So by right, the RAA staff in the agency, deployed to the agency, should have they have the authority to stop the head of agency from making certain purchases and certain procurement when they feel that the compliance mechanisms, the PFM law, the PPCC law are violated. They can stop the purchasing. So they are there for institutional internal prevention and to compel compliance. But then the GAC comes after the event to audit. So the GAC is like an external auditor. So we need both. Do we need an internal audit agency? That's the next question. But does each agency need an internal auditor? Obviously, every agency needs an internal auditor to be able to make sure the institutional processes are followed when they are doing public procurement, when they are doing expenditure. just to ensure that compliance mechanisms are enforced. That's what they are for.
But then it comes back to the issue that we're still having with the integrity institutions. If we're saying that each agency needs internal auditor, right? And then okay, we have an internal audit agency that actually seconds auditors to these institutions. Because I know when we're at the Ministry of Labor, we had an internal auditor from the IAA. So you have them coming in and doing what they're supposed to do, as you mentioned. But if we're saying, do we need the internal audit agency, and say, okay, no, we don't need the internal audit agency, let each institution hire their own auditor, but then it comes back to who's hiring the auditor. So if the minister proper has interest in that auditor, or the HR or deputy minister or whoever has interest in an auditor and hires them, that auditor then feels obligated to do their bidding. So which is what the internal audit is trying to cancel out, and saying this internal audit agency is a separate institution from the ministry, and they don't report to the minister, they report to the head of IAA. So again, it comes back. I think what we're saying is we do need the IAA, because if we do need auditors, then we can't leave the ministries to hire their own auditors.
Sure. So that is it right there. Once we have the IAA, to whom the auditors report, and then the IAA annually gave compliance reports to the ministries. So if they just listen to the internal auditors, most of the flaws will be corrected in the agency, and by the time the GSC comes, the work is done. Because the IAA auditor in the agency is telling you that you cannot pay anyone without a signed contract between you and the person, or without the person having an appointment letter. You cannot pay them. And you cannot pay for a good without voucher and without justifying that a bidding process went on. And these are the questions that GAC come in the end to ask you. But if you just follow them during the process, so it's a continuous process the IAA is doing to make sure you don't violate the law. And then when the GAC come, you get a clean bill or a clean audit bill. But most of them, sometimes they see the internal auditor as some NSA security on them. And then, yeah.
Keff Hassan.
Oh God, how are you, Doctor? Yeah, that's the right way. Yeah. Okay. Let me just ask you this quick. The new LACC law, it's not toothless, right?
Well, I think it strengthened the LACC to some degree. And previously, the LACC didn't have direct prosecutorial power. They needed to submit their investigative report to the Ministry of Justice. And then the Ministry of Justice had 90 days to prosecute. After 90 days, without prosecuting, the LACC could pick up the case now and prosecute. But because of tough struggle over time, even during President Salif's time, and I remember there was a serious tough struggle between when Benedict Sano was minister and the LACC. So there was a serious tough struggle. Due to that tough struggle, LACC was not prosecuting. And then the LACC was also saying, even if the Ministry of Justice is failing to prosecute within 90 days, we don't have the money as LACC to go to court. So, but the new law, I think it gives them direct prosecutorial power. I have to check that.
Yes,
how many days they have. Yeah, it
correct.
gives them direct prosecutorial power. And then it also allows for an independent recruitment of the commissioners. Previously, the president will wake up in the morning and just appoint commissioners to the LACC. And then the legislature will confirm them. I mean, based on their power, confirm or deny, but most of them were confirmed. Now the LACC commissioners have to apply. A technical committee assess the application and submit the list to the president, and then the president announce the nomination, then the Senate confirm. So if you, as an individual, a Liberian citizen, selected based on merit, and then you go through this kind of process, and after everything face a Senate again, I don't know what will make you to undermine your own authority, because your position is not based on any patronage. You didn't have to sing a battle cry to be appointed. You had to submit a CV, a detailed CV, go through interview. So I don't know what will motivate or what incentive will drive you towards partisan and biased behavior at an anti-corruption commission, having gone through such a detailed, professional, and merit-based recruitment exercise.
Yeah, okay. So we agree the LSCC law is it got more strength than the past LSCC law under
Sure.
the unity party government. Let me ask you this question quick. The president doesn't have absolute power to abolish tenure position. Is that correct, right?
No, the president doesn't have absolute power to abolish any law. Tenure positions are inscribed in laws.
Right.
And for them to be changed, it has to go through a legislative process.
Right.
But the president has power to initiate a removal proceeding against a tenure official who violates a law.
Who violates a law? Okay.
A tenure official who violates a law while in their office. For instance, they tell you that you can only be removed for cause. In most of the laws, they don't define the cause, but then they say prove misconduct. So a due process, only a due process can establish that this person has violated their office. And for instance, I hear maybe on social media and some radio stations, the people in the incoming government suggesting that they're going to remove some people in tenure. They just have to establish why they are going to remove them. You're not going to remove anybody only because they are from the other political party. If you saw them campaigning, you have to establish that the law says that they are not supposed to campaign. And then you have to give them their days in court because we are a country of law. You're not just going to remove somebody because this person was appointed by President Weah and the person campaigned for President Weah. Even if you saw them campaigning for President Weah, they are not guilty until you prove them guilty. Yes, most of the tenure law says, most of the law
I want to
is
hold
clear
you
in the
there.
law.
I want you to repeat exactly what you just said. I want you to repeat that.
If you heard that, what? Yeah?
If you see them, I got my reason. I just want you to repeat that. If you see them campaigning, you can just remove them. I want you to repeat that, my brother.
Kev, Murai is the lawyer here. Even if you caught someone stealing, you saw their hand in the frying pan or in a cookie jar, you have to take them to court. You're not going to stand and say and deliver your own justice on them, mob justice,
Due
start
process,
beating them all over the place. You have to take them to court and say and justify and provide evidence that you saw their hand in the cookie jar, and the person will tell you that they were only helping to close the jar. So you have to now is your war against their war. So you have to give them.
I also want to add to that.
Yeah.
Ibrahim, you said something very, very prudent. Not every tenure position is supposed to be apolitical. So just because you see someone in a tenure position campaigning doesn't mean they violated the tenure. Some tenure positions do require you to be apolitical. So like you said, you have to look at what the act says. And also you have to be able to take them to court for due process. Because remember, the Constitution, which supersedes all of our laws, gives people the right of political participation. So someone in a tenure position has the right to be actively involved in the political process if it does not violate what their act says. If the act now, for example, like the National Elections Commission, the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice and other justices, the LSCC, I believe. I don't know if it's LSCC, but is it GSC or something? There are other institutions that clearly
the Governance Commission. It's
right.
clear.
Governance
it's clear in the Governance Commission Act.
Clearly written that you have to be apolitical. But there are other tenure positions that don't require it. So again, as you mentioned, just because you see someone who's tenured, campaigning or involved in political processes does not mean they violated a tenure.
So if President Buakai, let me conclude. If President Buakai, if after January 22, President Buakai went ahead to just dismiss people because he has evidence that they were campaigning, that would be an exercise of mob justice by the president. So you have to prove that this person violated their oath of office while serving in a tenure position. They compromise the integrity of the office by participating in partisan activity against the law, and so you have to cite the law, and then you have to give them due process. Somebody can tell you that I was only standing by the picture they are showing of me in the Labour Party t-shirt, ANC t-shirt is a doctored photo. So is your war against their war. You have to prove
Photoshop.
Yeah.
Or when to carry something.
The reason I'm asking, Mariah,
let me ask one question before I head out.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking, Larry, 1 minute, I just wrap this up. The reason I'm asking, there's folks, guys that some of my friends, them who I do respect, we have this discussion in the back. Where's Ben? Oh, you said we'll have the discussion in the back. So I'm happy you two professional up there, Mariah.
So we're not professional, right?
Oh no, that's the discipline. That's the role. So
yeah, you agree with them today. That's why you talking all the things.
No.
Anyway, go ahead.
We had this debate, and Mariah, thank you for citing the Constitution, because we had this debate. But hey, what do I know? I'll leave it.
Okay. Quickly.
But if the people coming, the thing is, I mean, just a political thing. I got to slide in there. If you people coming to cut tenure people for a power, that I can't talk tenure people for a power.
Thank you. That is my point.
No. We wouldn't encourage UP. We wouldn't encourage UP to commit wrong and justify by the action of the city.
But our parents said nothing changes.
No, we will encourage the UP to act within the rule of law. Yes, Tomalin.
All of them should resign.
Yeah, you owe me. You owe me. All that yelling you are doing, you owe me.
All of them should resign.
Larry said, "Want to ask a question before he leaves?"
Yeah, I have a meeting coming up in like 12 minutes.
Okay. Go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, so real quick. So, Doc, here's the thing, right? There's this economist named Fernando de Soto. He has a book out there called The Mystery of Capital. He talks about why capitalism seems to work very well in the West, but it seems to fail everywhere else. And he does a lot of work on developing countries.
Yeah.
Is this tenure thing something that we see to work well in other countries, but it may not just work very well in places like Liberia and other developing countries? Moreover, do you think that people may be using tenure positions as a form of pay to play?
Yeah, I think so. Politicians always want to maximize the opportunity they have to extend patronage and extend their own power. Obviously, people have used tenure position to protect their stay in power, to give themselves some extra advantage. I think it was in this light when President Weah did some partisan appointment really to the LACC, to the NEC, and those were two agencies that were very crucial, and we saw direct partisan appointments being made to those agencies. And that's the nature of politicians. And
okay, great.
That's the nature of politicians.
So I have to hop into a meeting real quick.
Yeah, so Larry, thank you for very brilliant questions. But at the end of the day, what we need to do now moving forward is building strong countervailing institutions to be able to counter-check some of these excess powers that politicians want to exercise. Brother Larry, I tell you, even you, when you are in that position, you want to maximize opportunities to deliver on your own manifesto. So whatever authority that you find undermining or restraining you, you will find ways around them. But when the institutions are there, they will stop you and then compel you to go by the rule of law.
I swear that you almost say you don't want to squander opportunities.
Yeah, quickly, right? The statutes at these tenure institutions, do they override the presidential power in the Constitution, like in Article 56? The statute at these tenure institutions, do they override the presidential powers?
No, I think the Supreme Court ruled the Lotto case, the case with the National Lottery, based on the Supreme Court assessment, I don't think it suggests that it overrides the president's power under Article 56, because the same constitution gave the legislature the right to establish agencies for the functioning of government and to make provisions for those agencies. And if the legislature went ahead using that power and established an agency and gave them X, Y, and Z powers with certain incentives, tenure is also an incentive. With certain incentive, I don't think it overrides the president's power to appoint and dismiss.
Okay, last thing. There are a lot of tenure people watching this show.
You the host now. Why you I beg
you. There are a lot of tenure people watching this program tonight, and they want to put this question there. Now, how can you allay the fears of tenure officials now? That because the questions of the issues have been
coming for that job.
People have been saying, well, people be running to
you big get dropped.
Honestly, I won't call him, but when lawmakers say, look, My position is honored. Somebody won't take my position from me. I got 2 more years left on my tenure. I got 6 months or whatever the case. How can you lay their fears tonight? Say, look, that they are. I know you're not a president, but you're talking a lot, making a lot of sense tonight. How can you lay the fears of these people that there should be no reason of fear? Because another one is that when you're there, the governance commission, some people say, well, if they want to remove me from my tenure position, pay me off, pay me my remaining years on my tenure, 200,000 or 300,000, I can go. How can you lay their fears tonight that they are listening to you, watching?
Someone already getting
I think
to go.
I think for people holding tenure, for people holding positions that are tenure under the law, once they are delivering on their mandate and they are not violating the law, I don't think they should worry about losing their job when their tenure hasn't expired. I don't think we should talk about those who are holding tenure. I think we should talk about the president, to embolden the president to rule and govern by the rule of law. If someone hasn't violated the law, they should not be removed from their position without a justified cause and without giving a due process. And those hawks in the Unity Party, we should encourage them that the campaign is over. They should now focus on the key task of governance. The hawks, the fighters in the Unity Party. So we should tell them that you cannot. The campaign is over. You can continue to fight after the election. You have a key task of governance. So they should now focus on that task, and only if, when it is necessary and justified by law, that someone can be removed from that position, then the president can act. But the president's action is not to just sit in the executive mansion and say, Mr. John Paul or John Brown, you are removed. It should be a judicial process that establishes guilt, so that the person is convinced by themselves that they violated the law. And so this is the sanction that comes with violating the law, is a removal from office, maybe suspension. I don't know in which cases they provide for suspension, but everything should be done in line with our constitutional principle of the rule of law.
Let me come in one question here. How will you measure the success of some of these tenure areas? Because some of them are not even bringing anything into any kind of revenue in. They're just there, and folks are just getting crazy salary, and they are not even bringing anything in. They are not bringing nothing to the government budget, and they're just sitting there getting free money. How do you guys measure the success when it comes to these tenures?
So some of them, not all agencies of government will bring revenue. Some are transformational agencies. Some are meant for stability, and they have various functions. Some create the condition for the revenue agencies to collect the revenue. So, like, we were sitting at the Governors Commission, and people will say, oh, they're just sitting over there pushing paper. You can't see them doing nothing. Of course, the Governors Commission is not public works.
A lot of them. I mean, he has a wealth of information, though.
We just messing with Dr. That's all.
But Mariah, the Governors Commission is not
the work they did. We know the work.
The Governors Commission, the Governors Commission.
Explain that to a country of almost 60% illiterate people.
Thank you.
No. We're not writing textbooks. We're writing policies to shape the government. So we're not Ministry of Public Works to be in the street and then everybody see us with shovel, with yellow machine. So our role was to organize the institutions of government so that they function effectively. We worked with the Ministry of Public Works to strengthen their institutional capacity, and they were delivering. But people wouldn't see that. Now we created county service centers. I tell you, I gave you a case study. When after research across the country, we saw what was happening in the counties. People were getting married. Women were getting married in the counties. People were having children. Those children had no birth certificate. So through the decentralization, we said, okay, since political decentralization is yet to come, we can try a process of administrative decentralization. And then we went again, we wrote some of the papers that people were saying we're just writing papers. We wrote the National Deconcentration Strategy. We sold that to the president, and the president bought the National Deconcentration Strategy. From that came the county service centers. Okay. The first county service center was established in Grand Basso in June 2015. By the end of December 2015, over 300 businesses in Grand Basso had registered. So those were women businesses catering. They were there. They couldn't register. And because they don't have business registration certificate, they could not access finance. Banks could not give them loan. No one could give them contract easily. But then those women were sitting in that place. They can't come to Monrovia. The cost of coming to Monrovia to register a business at a business registry was so high. Up to 300 businesses got registered in Basso. So what was the net effect to the government? Because they were registered now, they could access capital, they could transact businesses legally. Government was collecting taxes from them. About 800 children got birth certificate. I didn't get a birth certificate until I entered university. Because I was born in Bomi County, you couldn't get birth certificate there. You have to come to Monrovia to get birth certificate. I was in university. When I first wanted passport, that's when I got birth certificate. How many Liberians going through that? But now it's not the case. Because of the work we did, 800 children in the first 6 months in Basso got birth certificate. And then there were 300, not 300, about 225 marriages were registered. But most of those women, when you ask them when you got married, they will tell you 1990, 1995. But they didn't have marriage certificates. So they didn't have protection. So that's the kind of work we were doing in the background. But we didn't have yellow machines. They said the people that
But let me, I want to.
So
yeah. Quickly. Yeah, quickly, Dr. Nan, thank you. And I'm enjoying the conversation. Now I see you say you were born in Bomi and you didn't have birth certificate. Now I see why Keff don't have a birth certificate. You are too. So
can I excuse our boy Marable?
But at least you ended up getting yours. He staying get his here. We stay in the way you were born. But anyway, it's okay. No, but it's a great discussion.
I swear that Dr. There is so intelligent.
Yeah. I knew you were about to say that the reason you're so intelligent and solid because you're from Bomi.
So you seriously don't have birth certificate?
Yeah, nobody.
I get passport. Huh?
That's the question I wanted to ask.
No, but in all fairness, let me say this. I think you are absolutely right. I think we can laugh around and say, but there's a point where this thing has to stop, right? Exactly. And I think the Unity Party government has a responsibility because they campaign on a lot of these things. They felt that the things that were done in 2017, in 2018, and it's just fascinating to see that some of their people are peddling some of these same things, that they ran on to say that they were coming to change. So I totally, well, no, I'm not. I want to share the same optimism that Dr. Nier has, but I will lean on him for that. Let me ask you this question: right now, right? If when it comes to the issue of all of the work that was done at the Governance Commission, and you guys did an excellent job. Dr. Sawyer, I think. You guys, listen, God bless his soul. May he rest in peace. His contribution just didn't stop at interim president. For him to leave from the presidency to come down to be governance commission chair and do the kind of work that he did, I think that's the reason why he still holds a special place in our country's history. How do you, what kind of, and this is a question for you directly. What are you going to be doing? I know you do a lot of work with the Amos Sawyer Foundation. Are you going to be a strong advocate for these things to get implemented? Is that the kind of role you envision yourself playing in the new, within the new administration? With the new administration? Because there's a lot of things that you just talked about here that we all talk about, but we don't even know that these things are already sitting down waiting just to get implemented. We all make all this noise about information ministry. Let's get rid of information ministry. Let's do this. You just said there is a plan that was submitted to the cabinet in 2013.
Tourism. Oh yeah.
The tourism. There's something I've been saying over and over. You were speaking just now. I actually texted the new speaker, and I said to him, I hope you're listening to the closing argument because all of the things that Dr. Nier is talking about, these are legacy things that you probably may want to take on and work with the president, and the country can remember you for that. So I want to know what kind of role you envision for yourself in this new dispensation.
So when I came back to the country, at that time, Dr. Sawyer was alive, and I was trying to define my own role in the space. So I thought that what was missing in the country was a policy research institute. We have the civil society advocating, we have the consulting firms, but then we didn't have this institute that would bridge academia, policy, practice, and advocacy.
A think tank.
So yeah, a think tank,
Yeah,
exactly.
I think tank, great. Yeah.
So some friends, I called some friends together, and we established what we call now the Duco Institute for Social and Economic
You didn't call
Research.
me because in politics.
No, you obviously couldn't. I couldn't call you, but you know, when we were doing the work, I invited you. I said I wanted you to help me do this with your political leader. So I still lean on you at some point. Yeah. So we established the Duco Institute for Social and Economic Research, and these are some of the things that we are going to be lifting up at the Duco Institute. Supporting with policy research and advocacy, doing the research and advising the incoming administration, particularly agency-specific recommendations. The Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, we want to work with them to strengthen the county service center, particularly because most of the county service centers actually are closed. They haven't been working because they don't have money. And so what is happening now at the county service centers is extortion, because the public got to know about the service center. Birth certificate for children at the county service center is free. For children under 12 is free. So because now they are not producing the birth certificate at the center because most of the machines have broken down. So citizens do go there for the services, and the staff sitting there, they will tell the citizens, I have to carry this thing to Monrovia. So you have to pay my way. And so if you are collecting, for instance, marriage certificate, and you pay the traditional marriage certificate, maybe it's $25. Then they will tell you, because I'm going Monrovia for this thing and coming back next week, you have to put extra $20 on it. So if you collect this transportation fare from 20 other persons, so sometimes they are sitting in the county for 1 month collecting all of the applications, then they come to the head office and then spend another 2 or 3 weeks processing all of these and take it back to the county. So it is creating incentive for extortion of the citizens and then delaying services. So we intend to work with the incoming administration, give them some recommendations on strengthening the service center. And some of the recommendations already, I did a study for the World Bank on this 2 years ago. Some of the recommendations is to retain some of the resources that are generated at the service center, to retain them in the county, to keep the generators on. Those are the problems. When a computer breaks down at the service center, nobody to repair them. Sometimes they don't even have printers. So the recommendations are retain maybe 10 or 20% of what people pay for driver license, what they pay for marriage certificate, retain them in the county to continue to provide the services, to pay for administrative and other logistical costs. And then we are also trying to push the political decentralization. There's already the Local Government Act, but then they remove the element of election. We want to push that. So the role I find, the niche I've identified for myself at this stage is to support with policy research and advocacy and produce more policy recommendations for the government and work with partner agencies in the government that are willing to drive policy reform. And then at some stage, we want to start training mid-level civil servants in policy research and other elements of monitoring and evaluation, provide training for them so that they are competent enough to deliver on their responsibility. Even though they may be trained, they have the degrees, they have some competency, but we want to do some specific agency-specific and sector-specific training for some of these agencies moving forward. And I think I can deliver in that sphere far better than I can deliver in government.
So let me ask, let me just piggyback on your response to Benjamin's question. You know, and this has been fascinating. There's no doubt. There are a lot of information that you share here today that, you know, I didn't know existed. Like Ben said, you know, there are a lot of things that, you know, that work is being done. And
you kept what you did over the last 6 years.
Implementation, all of that. But my particular question, so I like the piece about, you know, keeping some of the resources collected at the service centers, because, you know, like, for example, I'm in the States, so we have so many different service centers. The county, for example, the city of Brooklyn Park, in City Hall, we have a center there. You can go and get your driver's license, your tabs for your cards and all of that. But the county, so the county services and the state services, that money, some of the money stays in the city. That's how we make money that way. You know, the city is part of our income generation. Mechanism that we set up. But my question to you on some things that you said earlier, I know you just referenced it a little bit about elections. The elections of city mayors. So if we look at Monrovia, for example, that was an act passed by the Congress, by the Liberian Congress, the Liberian National Legislature, back in the 19th century, in 1855, March 1st, 1855. So it's on the books. And the Monrovia, for example, should have 9 council members, city council members. Okay, so those things are in law. So they were already there. So what is the governance commission? I mean, recommendation. What is it going to do when you already have an existing law that is in place? So I would think that we were pushed to have these laws implemented. Okay, then the other piece to it is that if you look throughout the world, I mean, we always talk about being modeled after the U.S. I mean, maybe on paper, but in reality, we're not. We don't operate the way systems and institutions in America, operate. So
thank you.
Your 20,000 to 30,000. If an area, the population, between 20 to 30,000, automatically, not automatically, but you becomes a city. You can then apply to get incorporated as a city. So anything under 20,000, then you are town. Okay. And then you have the numbers for for village, and it varies from country to country. In Japan, for example, it's 50,000 before you are determined to be a city. Now in Liberia, I think one of the previous segment, one of the fire chiefs talked about that. So one of the things I would like to see the governance commission do is sort of this system, set up a system, and when everyone comes in, we just work within this system. So like the guy talked about, if you go to China and beg China for money, China give you a fire truck. You go to Turkey give you an equipment or something. So you're talking about the interconnectivity of all these different systems and all these different things that we have. You see one sign that says miles, because we operate on the imperial system officially. Then you see another sign that says kilometers. You see people spelling, so it's, you have all of these things. So depending on where we're getting the money from, that's what sort of drive our, what is the nomenclature,
sure,
all that sort of stuff. So what criteria?
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So what sort of criteria have you guys laid out to determine, to define what is a borough? Because a borough is not even we get borough, then we get township, because I'm from, I grew up in Ganta, but I was born in Cardwell. Cardwell is almost more than 20,000 people, but Cardwell is still considered a township.
Thank you. Winfred, let me just address this quickly, then I'll go back to the previous thing about the election. The Local Government Act that was drafted at the Governance Commission, the process of drafting that law started 2006 with consultation across the country, district, county, with chiefs, with local officials. The final legislation says for a locality to be considered a city, it must have at least 10,000 people. That's the first thing. And that was determined based on the population census of 2008. And then it provides certain services that must be available before you can apply. But then it also says that all of the localities that were existing before the passage of the law as cities, for the 200 and more cities we had, must be dissolved, except the 15 county capitals and Monrovia. And all other localities will have to submit formal application, and an assessment by a technical team at the Ministry of Internal Affairs and LISJs will assess them against the criteria before the legislature can give them the city charter. That's for that level. The criteria is there, but I tell you, even though the law is passed And the law even eliminates what they call statutory district. We have a cumbersome local government system. You have statutory district commissioners, statutory district superintendent, you have district commissioners. And you go in one locality, you find 3 persons living there, they all have different authorities, and they are fighting each other, a tough struggle. Even though this law is passed, even last year, the legislature was still creating new localities. And who leads these things? Is the lawmakers in those areas. They lead these things, and then they push to the president to appoint people in those places, just as a means of distributing patronage. Now, let me come to the election. City mayors.
But before that,
yes, Mariah, quickly, please. Let me end my thought on this.
Okay,
please, let me end my thought on this. You talk about the Monrovia City Charter, which called for election many years back. But then the 1986 Constitution gives the president the power to appoint officials of government. So let me tell you the controversy. What happened? When President Sirleaf was elected in 2000, when she took over 2006, the opposition CDC and Liberty Party were already mobilizing for the Monrovia City mayor position.
Mm-hmm.
They were preparing for that election, and the national election, the National Election Commission was also preparing to organize that election. They did an initial assessment. When President Sirleaf heard that the Liberty Party and CDC were preparing candidates for the election, she wanted to appoint her mayor.
Liberia is an outlier.
No, but let me give you the fun of the story. So President Sirleaf tested, and she went and appointed a mayor in Zredru. And when the Liberty Party knew that the appointment of the mayor in Zredru was a test case for appointing to Monrovia, they went to court to challenge the appointment in Zredru.
Both LP and CDC.
LP and CDC went to court to challenge that appointment, that she didn't have the right to appoint because they were waiting for election. But then the Supreme Court ruled that because Article 55 or 54 says the president shall have the right to appoint superintendents, district commissioners, and other officials of local government. Other officials of local government. So the Supreme Court interpreted that other officials of local government as including mayors. Because no part of the Constitution talk about mayor. There is nothing mentioned in the Constitution about city mayor. But the Supreme Court says city mayors are other officials of local government. So that gave the president the right to appoint mayors. And then Charles Bromsky raised the argument at the Senate with some senators, what would become the function of an appointed mayor and the function of an elected mayor, because the City Act, the City Charter was for an elected mayor. And so that made the president and that made the Senate to stop the confirmation of President Sirleaf's appointment. And then she now started appointing acting mayors. And it has just become a tradition.
And everybody been acting. No mayor can go to the Senate. It's because of that thing.
So when we went for the constitutional reform, one of the proposals at the constitutional reform, the proposition was to elect superintendents, district commissioners, and city mayors. The citizens approved that because we needed to change that provision in the Constitution. But the legislature removed that. So they didn't submit that to the referendum. So we are still a long way to go with our constitutional democracy. Mariah, you can come in.
Mariah, quickly, Mariah, quickly. Now, so, Dr. Yen, so there is the flip argument, but some people are saying where we are now, that we need to strengthen and build our framework, because if you were to have an election now, if you're going to have an election now, you might have an incompetent person who is popular,
of course,
win the election, but then
that's the danger of democracy.
You cannot have it both ways. It's democracy, right?
You have to find your way. You have to. And if the person doesn't perform, the people will remove them the next election.
Exactly.
Mariah, come in, please.
Mariah, take us home.
Given the 10,000 persons per city, is that something that's up for amendment? Because if that's part of the requirements for a city, then all our district are cities.
Immoral.
Well, you have to apply. You have to.
Because given the population,
well, not necessarily. So you have Monrovia, the city charter. There is a Monrovia boundary. A Monrovia city map.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So and then there's Greater Monrovia. Then you have Greater Charlotte. Metropolitan Charlotte, and then the city.
But we probably know them already.
Yeah, but those
Go ahead,
districts,
Uncle.
Mariah, you are talking about, those are
On a more
electoral
serious
districts.
note, though, on a more serious note, because a part of recommending these things to either the incoming government or the legislature is to ensure that it reflects not just the current reality but future
Yes.
realities.
Yes.
I know this
Exactly.
was done in 2006, or this was done almost what, more than 20 years ago, almost
Yeah,
about 18
but
years ago. The
they were informed by
population
the population census of
exactly then,
2008. So we have a new
right?
census now.
So
Yeah.
we have a new census, and it's important that either we amend the act, and definitely the population given, because even District 10 alone is almost 50,000 people. So if we're saying that, for example, instead of Monrovia, I know the boundary because when I worked at MCC, we had the map starts from Vamoma. Then you have District 10 and other areas that are very populated, and then you also have the township of Congertown, which is different from the city of Monrovia and different from the city of Painesville. That also has more than 10,000 persons populated, and of course the Brewer of Newtown has definitely exceeded the 10,000, and the township of Caldwell, as you mentioned. So all of these things just within Montserrat itself, there's a need apparently to go back to the act and either amend it to reflect current and future realities, because we've really exceeded that 10,000%. That's what I wanted to mention when you're talking about it.
And added to that also is the electoral districts that no longer represent the reality. So
The
at the Duco
realities.
Institute, we at the Duco Institute, we wrote a policy brief on the extent to which some localities will be underrepresented. For instance, you have River G, which has a total of 37,000 voters, the entire county. But they have three representatives
Yeah,
coming to
3
the house.
representatives.
But you
Yeah.
have district number 4, Montserrat County, 82,000 voters with one representative.
One representative.
Yeah, so we need to go back and look at our
Revisit.
population distribution and do redistricting. For
Okay.
instance, the Constitution calls for 20,000 voters. But in 2010, the legislature and the executive mansion had a compromise because they thought some counties will not have sufficient lawmakers. So they had a compromise. So we had a policy brief that we wrote at the Duco Institute, and we provided some recommendation calling for constitutional referendum on this issue. Yeah.
I can.
Wow, man, this is so interesting. So you guys are the one who got behind the thing.
Let me just make this announcement. I mentioned earlier the speaker was watching. He has said to me, he just sent me a message that he would like to have a conversation with you. He really believes that you bring so much. I'm reading it verbatim, so much in depth, and he said I should inform you that you have a partner in him in your fight for reform. So I think
Thank you so much.
You have a chance.
Thank you.
Have a chance to reach out and speak with him, and you guys can work together. I think after the inauguration, but he's very clear that you have a partner in him. Yes.
Thank you, Ben. Okay.
Social economic research. Look,
Good night, Tomalin.
Oh, Doctor, you hear me now?
He reading the main title. He reading the main title.
Oh, Dr. Ibrahim Al-Bakri Nye, Director, Sion Fellow, Duke Institute of Social and Economic Research. I want to say thank you so much. You have done a whole lot for us today, and people have been watching you. We're getting a lot of messages here. This platform is open to you because the work you are planning to do for our country is, I think we need to have a platform to help spread the word. And always know that you're welcome to this platform anytime.
Thank you.
Appreciate you a lot. And the people who are tenure positions, I think you are laid affairs down tonight.
I know.
Because people have a lot of.
Mariah helped them today.
Yeah, Mariah.
Well, it looked like Mr. Hassan has a friend who has a tenure position.
Of course. No, don't mind.
But Ibrahim, if mayor position was tenure, you have a friend who had tenure.
Yeah, but the mayor of Monrovia is still my friend, my very good friend.
Oh, good.
Yeah. If mayor of tenure, you have a friend who has tenure.
Yeah, that's true. So my friend is losing his job because the mayor position is not tenured.
Yeah, but don't forget to send me that information with
the party comments. The party comments.
Okay, yeah. I wanted actually to ask about this party comment because it's after 12 years. And it's been a long day, and I don't know, Mariah, you're in Monrovia or you're in the US, so we're not in the same time zone. So we're in the same time zone, but you look so
We're in the
alert,
same
and I'm
time.
already falling. I'm already falling asleep.
I'm still jet lagged.
Okay. Well, I want to say thank you for the opportunity to present on the closing argument. And I'm happy to find out that the argument hasn't been closed, because I've seen social media posts that the argument has been closed. But I want to encourage that you maintain this platform, because we need alternative voices. We don't want our country to operate in an echo chamber. And we need alternative voices. We need, this is what we need. We need alternative voices. We don't want our country to operate in alternative in an echo chamber. We want platforms that give opportunity for people to speak out and to not just expose ills in society, but to criticize constructively and, where possible, destructively. To criticize those who are corrupt, who have been found guilty of not performing, to criticize them until they resign. So we will encourage you to keep this platform, and other fellows of Duco Institute are equally competent. They bring a lot. I have a very good friend, Aaron Weir, who can tell you about reconciliation and transitional justice.
Aaron Weir?
No, Aaron Weir. There's Aaron Weir. There's Aaron Weir.
Aaron Weir, my classmate. I thought I was.
Okay, so Aaron Weir and Aaron Weir. So there was a point the two of them were working in the same office, so the staff were confused.
Really?
Yeah. Okay. So then we have another fellow, Ali Kaba, who is an expert on land reform.
Yeah, Ali is a good friend. Yes.
Yeah, Ali Kaba. There is Baba. There is Aaron. There is Tenin Dalia, who is also working on this thing of universal jurisdiction. So the Duco Institute will be available at any point. I mean, anytime you are ready, we can send fellows here to present on technical and areas of their competency. So again, thanks to all of you panelists. Keep this platform alert and do your work. Be robust. I mean, engage on critical policy issues so that our people hear alternative voices. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, John.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
So I can log out now?
Yes, you can. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So,
great discussion.
Ladies and gentlemen, just give our closing, and then we can call your day. Mariah, thank you again for joining us. I mean, you provide a lot.
Mariah, you need to start coming now, man. You finish the honeymoon business.
Mariah, fun.
You finish the honeymoon business. I told you.
Your politics. I can go discussing policies.
Yeah. I told you, Michael know he married politicians, so he got to.
But Michael said he like you. See, watch the show.
But let me do my closing.
Ben, let me do my closing. You've been talking, man. Let me do my closing. You've been talking. I'm enjoying the show. Let me do my. My closing will base. My closing will base. No, my closing will base on this. Yes. No, let me quick do my closing. You can talk. My closing will base on this.
Your input today?
Yes, that's what my closing will be. Look, today I went to. Well, actually, I cannot say I went to court because I was informed by someone who, on who on the other side that look, I've been sued. So I got the information, but I was never served. So I went to the courthouse and tried to find out because I didn't want them to,
arrest you.
No, it's a civil arrest, but I didn't want them to for the court to feel like I didn't want to be at a trial voluntary, or probably disrespect the court. So I went there, and they're looking there. They say there's no trial date, nothing, because I was in serve, and so they informed me to file in a motion, but what I saw at the court, they served somebody. I saw a documentation saying they served me personally. I don't know why some fake business went on. So they opened the file.
They forged that document too.
I tell you, man, something going on.
What are you talking about?
Let me stop.
I went to listen.
Sue this guy.
I went to the court. So I went there.
We get caught.
Yeah. I went there. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Let me slow
yeah. So I went to the courthouse, because when I received the information from a friend saying being sued, so I put the case number, email and get what they call case search. You put a case number. It came out, say I was served. So I was like, no. So
but if you're not served, how you knew the case number?
Okay, let's see now. No, Tomalin, this is legal matter. It's not a joke because everything we say here can be used against anybody. No, it's not a joke. I can cease from here because Mariah asked a very good question. I can cease. This is not a joke. It's a legal matter. She asked a very good question. No, because I can stop right now because I don't want the. I don't want. Go ahead. No, Tomalin, we all are colleagues. Everything you say can be used against me. So we gotta be careful what we say. Yeah, so it's not a joke, Tomalin. Yeah, so let's say because they were on their show was talking about it. You understand? So this thing gets into because if it's announced and invited me to be on his show today, he even told me to come on his show today. So it's not a joke thing. Yeah, he announced he's telling me to come on his show. But hey, I'm here. So I'm saying so what I saw I saw my name, right, saying they have been served. They had two addresses. One formal address, the other one was a liquor bar. That's the part that made me laugh.
I take it today, man. It was a bar in Fallujah.
It's a liquor bar, right? Yes. So I went and I will send you some of the copy, Mariah. So I went there. They looked in there. I gave them my lease. I gave them. So they were like, "What is this? This look like a nonsense thing." So we filed into the judge to strike it down because they went in a file for extension for March 13th. So we filed in to strike it down because I was never ever served. The address is not my address, two address, one on different. And the most crazy part, it's not like they're saying maybe they served somebody that took it on behalf of me. They're saying they served me personally. And the address are liquor bar. So you serve me the liquor. So talking about everything that's messed up. So I went there, it just messed up. So we filed a motion, and I just waiting for what the judge will say. It just sounds crazy.
I hope you didn't go drink Blue Moon at that bar. You received that.
The kid need to comment with April 29. That kid will continue on April 29 time. Anyway, let's go.
Anyway, but guys,
what's happening on April 29?
Yeah, I beg you. We get raised here, but right? You lawyer. Me, I'm lawyer. I don't know.
What are you talking about?
Let me say that. But let me do my closing. I thought it was a fascinating discussion today. Don't mind from a cattle a coty. We have what I did. No, in all seriousness, honestly, I got what you're saying. Let's wait and see what happens after. Let's wait and see what next. We want to be. We're respecters of the law. We respect the law. We don't want to. We get made like a certain situation. But let me say this: great conversation, great discussion. Both discussions were very enlightening. Winfred, thank you for the fire chief. I think when they come back, let them come in and let's have an extensive discussion because that's a whole new conversation. You don't hear nobody talking about fire because nothing in Boye. The last time I think some fire happened in Liberia and a lot of people died. And when everybody was explaining, talking about fire, Liberia is a country where once.
So what you think about that? There's fire every day in the country.
Well, no. What I'm saying is if they don't make the news, we don't talk about it, right? I remember the last time we had an extensive discussion on fire business or something happened. I remember what happened. Some major fire disaster
explosion or what?
Yeah, some major fire disaster happened and everybody were up in arms about
the one in Bon County with the
Bon County, yes. We also had that, yeah. So I'm looking forward to the fire chief when they come back. to hear what their recommendations and how are they going to be able to partner. Like I said, for me, I'm more interested in sustainability than the regular intervention. Every time a president or opposition leader come, they go big firehouse, they get in one fire truck, they get in what. There's nothing wrong with us setting the basis. So I thought it was a fascinating conversation. I think Dr. Nyen even talked about that. His with Dr. Nyen, I think he was very fascinating. I mean, just the level of information, the wealth of experience, and I'm glad he said he's going to remain engaged. I want to thank the speaker for for listening and saying that, look, he is looking forward to, these are some of the legacy things. I remind people.
Speaker what to all the smart people in the country.
Listen. Kofa. I think Kofa is on. It has the potential to probably be the most consequential and one of the most effective speakers our country will ever see. I mean, you saw his speech that he gave. He was very bold, even calling out war and economics crimes court. I've never heard a speaker. I've never heard another branch of government take that issue.
My future job offer on the table.
Yeah. Don't worry, bro. Mariah, you have a space.
Mariah, next week we'll be inviting a special guest. So now,
Mariah, you need to come. You need to come more to.
We'll be a special guest next week. Look at the calendar.
You need to.
I thought we all talk politics and not inside. We all talk politics.
But seriously, policy. We are now in the time of policy and solutions. We are now in the business of policy and solutions. I think that's
Ben, who represented Biden at the inauguration on Monday.
Yeah. Well, here they go.
Biden coming.
No, what Biden? I beg you, Biden. No, we can confirm.
But Ben, what do you mean by that? Biden, that president? No, Ben, you're not do that.
No. Sorry, I'm not gonna do that.
Let me come in. Biden is president of the United States. In fact, he is the Joseph Boyka of America, and Joseph Boyka is the Biden of Liberia. There's so many similarities between Biden and Boyka.
Did you read that article, right? You read that article?
Yes, and but President Biden is busy. I don't think he's going to make the trip. But my White House sources have just confirmed to me that Ambassador Linda Thomas Greenfield will be leading the delegation. The ambassador, yes, the honorary Liberian, and the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. She's a cabinet ranking member. I think it's a strong delegation. She's somebody who cares about our country, and we welcome. That's what we are hearing. We are hearing that from my sources in the White House. They're saying to us that Thomas Greenfield has been giving the nod to represent President Biden. Obviously, there will be a delegation. It's not just her one coming. There may be the Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs.
So she will be the ranking.
Yeah. So she will come. So we look forward to the inauguration. I think the inauguration is going to be very historic. Today, we want to congratulate Minister D. Maxwell Kimaya. Turning over a refurbished Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the vehicles that he secured through the government of Korea.
When you're on your way out.
Well, no, but they've been doing it.
It wasn't for government funding.
They've been doing it. They've been renovating it. So so today, I think they kind of climaxed it. Thank President Weah for his leadership on that. I think he too dedicated the D-Tware Sports Park today. So a lot of good things are happening in the country. We wait to see the administration of President Bokai and what they're going to bring to the table. We will be here constructively engaging them in the process, and we look forward to having a peaceful and a strong transition as our country move forward and we start to head in the right direction.
On a sad note, tomorrow will be the burial of the late Commissioner General Thomas Dona.
Yes.
I intend to stop by the funeral.
Yeah. Mariah, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah, he was a big brother.
Yeah, I've been
big funeral tomorrow. Yes,
it's very sad.
But guys, thanks a lot, man. Mariah, so next week, special guest. We'll let you know we're working on modalities now as panelists, but as a guest. Answer questions from all the guys. And we have questions.
I told you I was sabbatical.
That's about it right now.
Yeah. No, this was great. Ben, Tomalin, and Dr. Peabody. I know Keff, you were busy doing something else, but thanks for making this happen. And as Ben said, after the group has done their assessment in Liberia, and it will be I think would be a really great time to come back and hear from them what they found out and what they're going to do, because we're now talking about solutions, we're talking about policies and all of that. The conversation with Dr. Yan was fascinating. A lot of information. I enjoyed it a lot. So I'm glad that we were able to squeeze all of that together and make it all happen. So that was good. I'm looking forward to reaching out to him, because we need someone there too around there who understand the whole municipal governance structure and the importance of having functional municipalities around. We have all these sort of misnomer, and we have laws there that are not being implemented. So I really, 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 really liked him, and I'm glad that you guys brought him on and were able to put the both shows together, both segments together, and make it happen. So,
and happy birthday to the vice president. It was her birthday.
Yeah, how did I even forget?
I forgot again. Happy birthday to Vice President Taylor.
Vice President Taylor.
Happy birthday. I wish you the long life and good health.
Yeah. And Mariah, your piece on her was extremely touching. When I read your message to her, I was extremely moved. Obviously, everybody knows my biasness when it comes to the vice president, but I thought you being a strong female leader in the country also, who from the opposition.
Maybe they did, but the next vice president in waiting, female.
Mariah, huh? Yeah.
Mariah.
Listen, I believe Mariah is. And the funny thing about Mariah, many people don't know Mariah.
I'm with Jason already.
She's an Amuja leader. She's an
Amuja leader.
She's an Amuja leader. These look, Mariah. I think Mariah has a lot of political future ahead of her. I mean, the young lady that Mariah, one of her first campaigns was our campaign. I mean, she campaigned for Ellen, but when I think our campaign, she was very, very strong, and
we have you badly, massively.
Yeah.
I have someone to connect you with Mariah.
But Mariah has a strong future. So I have a strong future, and I think you are standing on the right shoulders, Mariah. You are standing on the right shoulders. Ellen Johnson, Sally, Joa Taylor. I mean, the name, just name them. They're out there.
I had to, sometimes I feel like we give people the flowers because they're in the same party with us, because we know them, because we want something from them, because of some reason. And there should be no reason. I mean, our leaders are not perfect. And I don't think we want perfection, right?
Yeah.
But when we have women leaders who've gone through it and gone through the fire, and succeeded to a certain extent. I'm still young in politics, and I can tell you how many days I've crawled in my bed and now want to wake up. And it's draining, it's exhausting. People don't see the background of being in politics, especially as a woman, and being in a male-dominated space.
Everybody cussing you.
That is not welcoming, especially of women who are vocal, of women who stand up for themselves. The Liberian political space, like most male-dominated spaces, are only welcoming to women who tend to be softer, who they claim are respectful. Let me say that, right? But when you stand up for yourself, when you speak up, when you challenge them in their space, they fight you viciously. And so when I see women like Madam Sirleaf and Vice President Joao Taylor, and how far they've been able to go in this space, it's a duty to really recognize them on special days, whether it's birthday or day of recognition, and especially as she's transitioning out of the vice presidency. It's moments like these when people tend to feel alone, when people tend to feel underappreciated, when everybody else is leaving them, when people feel they don't have power anymore, and so now I don't need to suck up to them, or I don't need to be a sycophant, or I don't need anything from them. I'm looking at the next people coming in. It's moments like these when these leaders actually need the acknowledgement and say, look, we see you, we acknowledge you, you know, we love you, we're inspired by you. And for me, that's what today was, especially being her birthday. And I think she politically, she's still young, like 61. She's achieved so much as a woman. And you know, I think the nation, these are moments that we're really supposed to appreciate our leaders, and we don't, because oh, she's from the CDC, or oh, she's from NPP, or oh, she's this, oh, she's that. And for me, it's not about that. So yeah, I felt moved to really do that birthday note to her. And I hope someone gave her a very big warm hug today, because she deserves it. So happy birthday, Madam Vice President.
And she's about to do great things. Trust me.
Councilor Mariah,
I figure.
She's about to do great things. Y'all watch out for her. I mean,
what's going to be doing the next 6
Tomalin, I'm not hearing you for some reason. Is it just me?
Are you?
Yeah, we can hear you. I hear you.
Yeah, we'll be hearing too. We'll be. Kev, come on, man. Mariah, next week, you watch someone else should be our guest next week. We'll ask her what she'll be doing for the next 6 years. We'll be asking her those questions, and she'll be our guest next week.
What, me for the next 6 years?
Actually, next week, when you're paid.
I get it. Also, all right.
No, I beg you.
I have a quick announcement.
No, why would do that?
The case have been withdrawn against the speaker, and negotiation will go on as planned next week. So we'll look
that case should not have been filed in the first place.
To our power next week. Let's see what happens.
You're desperate. You ain't got no case.
I have a quick announcement.
Go ahead quickly.
Yes. So on a Saturday, January 27th, I'm leading a team of, and the 2 fire chiefs and Pastor Collins will be there too as well. I'm leading a team of 10 volunteer medical doctors with Dr. Ruben Benedict will be conducting a health camp in Flela, Lower Bond County. So Flela is about 10 miles or so from Torota, where the accident took place. So it's between Salala and Torota. So we'll be there from 8 a.m. until 4 p.m. Saturday, January 27. We'll be providing medical services to the people in the area. So if you live in that area, you're welcome. And
that's great. In fact, at the time that the president who will be, you'll be his guest. You'll be already president, so you'll have the opportunity to have a smooth process.
Wow! All of a sudden, you love Liberia now.
Who, me?
I see you. I want you to be there.
I see you better don't know me, Kev.
Jesus. But anyway, it's good. It's good.
All right,